Chapter 1146. Another force from the blood pool directly sealed Li Zongjio on the spot, as if a blood net had been opened. Immediately, Li Zongjio exerted all his strength and broke through the blood net in front of him. His right hand held the sword. His left hand held the black dragon hammer. As the hammer landed on the ground, the thunderbolts surged. Like a surging cold light, the thunderbolts rushed forward directly. In the blood pool, Sky Wu was still fusing his power. However, Li Zongjio had disrupted him many times, which made Sky Wu extremely unhappy. Li Zongjio was always causing trouble here, which would affect his state. "Kid, do you really think I can't kill you?" Sky Wu's angry voice came from the blood pool. "Kill me? You think you can?" Li Zongjio waved his hand. The 8 burning soul pillars fell on the 4 sides of the blood pool with a boom. The burning soul pillars were personally refined by Sky Wu. He didn't expect that they would be used by Li Zongjio. Sky Wu couldn't bear it anymore. Then he slammed his palm into the pool of blood. Suddenly, the blood pool was filled with the smell of blood, and a blood shadow doppelganger condensed above the blood pool. When the blood shadow doppelganger appeared, the first thing it dealt with was the 8 burning soul pillars. 8 blood vines came out from the blood pool, wrapping around the burning soul pillars. These burning soul pillars were refined with my heart's blood. Do you think you can control them just because you want to? Sky Wu said coldly. The blood vines released their power, pulling the 8 burning soul pillars out. They pulled the pillars out from the ground. Li Zongjio held the unparalleled sword in his hand, and the fire ancestor's fire condensed on the sword. The sword energy fell immediately. With a loud boom, Sky Wu's blood shadow doppelganger used his blood palm to resist, but it was directly cut by the sword. This is the unparalleled sword. The sword energy surged, instantly shattering Sky Wu's blood shadow doppelganger. Blood Dragon Soul. Li Zongjio turned around and transformed into the Blood Dragon Soul. Suddenly he plunged into the blood pool. Immediately he began to plunder the power of the myriad beast blood pool. The Blood Dragon Soul was born from blood. The stronger the blood chi, the stronger the power of the Blood Dragon Soul, and the more ferocious the battle. As the Blood Dragon Soul surged over, it devoured most of the power in the blood pool. This made Sky Shaman, who was slowly absorbing the power of the blood pool, fly into a rage. "Bastard! How dare you steal the power of my blood pool?" Wu Tian was extremely furious. This blood pool didn't only contain the blood of meta beasts, it also contained the spiritual herbs that he had collected over the years. Using all sorts of methods, he spent a great deal of effort to create the blood pool. Who would have thought that Li Zongjio would step in at such a time? Originally, he wanted to obtain the matchless treasured sword. He would be able to complete the task with one of his clones. His original body was using the myriad beast blood pool to achieve a breakthrough. Once he obtained the matchless treasured sword, his strength would increase exponentially. No one in the entire Xingwu continent would be a match for him. Who would have thought that the King of Fire would be robbed halfway and his clone would be killed? Now, his #1 enemy had brought his matchless treasured sword to fight with him for the power of the blood pool. It was equivalent to his hard work. They had all been robbed by Li Zongjio on the way. This made Sky Shaman extremely unhappy. Where did this damn brat come from? How dare he go against me at every turn? How could Sky Shaman be a match for the Blood Dragon Soul in the blood pool? In the blood pool, the Blood Dragon Soul seemed to have returned to its home. Facing Sky Shaman's attack, the Blood Dragon Soul didn't bother with him at all. Its body swayed and dodged Sky Shaman's attack. Then, it began to absorb the power of the blood pool. It greedily absorbed. The power of the Blood Dragon Soul continued to increase. This naturally meant that Li Zongjio's strength was gradually becoming more terrifying. The two of them fought for the power of the blood pool at the bottom of the blood pool. For hours later, Wu Tian's figure jumped out of the blood pool. At the same time, Li Zongjio also rushed out. The Blood Dragon Soul slowly disappeared. There wasn't the slightest trace of the tainted blood on his body. The feeling of my previous life is back. Li Zongjio clenched his fists. He looked at his hands in disbelief. Sky Shaman, I really don't know how to thank you. As a token of my gratitude, I won't let you die too painfully. Originally, Sky Shaman was arrogant. Li Zongjio was prepared to torture him. But who would have thought that Sky Shaman would send him gifts one after another? This made Li Zongjio feel very embarrassed. He had to give him something in return. Li Zongjio, Sky Shaman, swear by my strength that if I can't kill you today, I will destroy myself. Sky Shaman said coldly. He glared at Li Zongjio. However, Sky Shaman wasn't too flustered and exasperated. He had already calmed down. Li Zongjio had ruined too many of his plans. He shouldn't have allowed this scourge to continue living. But he actually let him live until now. This was a mistake that Sky Shaman shouldn't have made. He should have killed Li Zongjio as soon as possible. There's no need to destroy yourself. You won't live past today. I said it. Li Zongjio's voice faded. He actually put away the unparalleled sword and charged at Sky Shaman with only his fists. Boom! His fist shook. The space seemed to be torn apart by Li Zongjio's fists. A black light flashed around Sky Shaman's body, and a black cloak appeared on his body. There seemed to be thousands of ghosts wailing on the cloak. The screams of the ghosts filled the air. Ghost cloak. Endless ghosts. The cloak suddenly swept up, bringing the two of them into a world of endless darkness. Li Zongjio's body shone with a golden light. He threw a punch into the void. Immediately, a hole was torn open in the space, revealing the outside world. But soon, Sky Shaman's power attacked. Countless ghosts occupied Li Zongjio's body, biting and gnawing at Li Zongjio's body. There were even ghosts that wanted to enter Li Zongjio's spiritual world. They wanted to devour Li Zongjio's spiritual energy. Unfortunately, the malevolent power was incapable of harming Li Zongjio in the slightest. A palm shot out. Sky Shaman, who was hiding in the darkness, was hit by Li Zongjio's palm. His whole body rushed out of the dark ghost array and flew out. How is this possible? Sky Shaman, who was hit, stared angrily. Half a month ago, when he fought with Li Zongjio in Feiyue City, this guy's strength wasn't enough. If it wasn't for the King of Fire, Li Zongjio would have been torn apart by Sky Shaman. At this moment, Li Zongjio was able to force him back with a palm. Chapter 1147. Powerful blood chi swirled around Sky Wu. Being pushed back by Li Zongjio with a single palm strike was something that shouldn't have happened. From the very beginning, Sky Wu had never looked Li Zongjio in the eye. In Sky Wu's eyes, Li Zongjio was nothing more than a grasshopper jumping up and down. How could Li Zongjio, a supreme being in the sky, fight him? Sky Wu's previous life was the sacred ancestor of the demons. Even in the human race, he was equivalent to an absolute saint. With such cultivation and a glorious history, he was just like Li Zongjio when he'd just been reborn. He didn't take anyone seriously. However, Sky Shaman's nature was different from Li Zongjio's rebirth. Li Zongjio had retained his wisdom and will from his previous life, while Sky Shaman had only awakened his memories from his previous life. His memories of his previous life had already been split into two. Not only had he turned into Sky Wu, but he'd also turned into King of Fire. If the two of them worked together and one day reached the Absolute Saint realm, then even Li Zongjio might not be his match. But now Sky Wu was just a dabbler. It's been a long time since I've fought for real. It seems that the world has long forgotten how terrifying the demons are. Sky Wu roared to the sky, and the blood chi around his body started to swirl around. A vortex appeared in front of him, and within the vortex, a giant blood-red sword appeared. Wu Tian stretched out his hand and grasped the giant blood-red sword in his hand. Tens of thousands of feet of blood chi surged out of Sky Wu's body. This sword is called the Thousand Slaughter Sword. It was refined with the blood of 100,000 humans. I haven't used it in a long time. Today, I'll use your head to refine my sword. Wu Tian said, his tone filled with pride. It was refined with the blood of 100,000 humans. An invisible murderous aura pressed down on him. Haha, do you see this fingernail of mine? I once used this fingernail to kill millions of devils. Do you believe me? Li Zongjio raised his pinky finger and showed it to Sky Shaman. Was killing 100,000 people that impressive? He even dared to show off in front of Li Zongjio. He had to teach Sky Wu a lesson. Wait till I chop off your head. Let's see if you can still jump around. Sky Wu said coldly. He grabbed the Thousand Slaughter Sword with both hands and slashed it forward. Boom! The overbearing power of chi and blood. It formed a terrifying blood storm. Under the storm-like sword momentum, the aura it carried seemed to have become a bloody will that could tear the sky apart. Swish! Swish! The blood chi kept hitting Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio raised an invisible force field in front of him, blocking the countless blood arrows. The unparalleled sword also slashed forward. Boom! Unparalleled sword chi immediately shot forward. Their sword chi collided. Immediately, they turned into 4 auras and flew in 4 different directions. The explosion shattered the boulders and trees along the way. At the same time, the aftermath of the battle. It stretched for tens of thousands of miles. After the collision of sword chi, the two figures suddenly approached each other. When they got closer, their sword momentum clashed with each other. The terrifying power fought against each other. One had to admit that Sky Wu's combat power was quite strong. The power of the Thousand Slaughter Sword in his hand was also above that of the unparalleled sword. Sky Wu slashed down. Although Li Zongjio blocked the sword, the power under his feet was instantly annihilated. Thousand Slaughter of the Demonic Way. The power of the Thousand Slaughter Sword in Sky Wu's hand burst out and swept toward Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio turned into a golden dragon, but he was still sent flying tens of thousands of meters by the sword. The boulders and trees along the way were all shattered, and a long path was cleared out. The golden light on Li Zongjio's body dimmed at this moment. Sky Wu stopped what he was doing and looked at Li Zongjio, who changed in front of him. Although Li Zongjio suffered a heavy blow, he was actually not injured. The reason why the golden light dimmed was because Li Zongjio had merged the power into his body. Original spirit possession. At this moment, Li Zongjio's body was not only glowing with golden light, but all the light was also completely restrained. The power merged into his body. His body, however, turned golden. The only thing that didn't change was the color of Li Zongjio's eyes. There seemed to be an even more powerful force in Li Zongjio's eyes, protecting Li Zongjio's eyes from being occupied by other forces. Useless effort. Sky Wu burst out with 10 times the power from before and rushed toward Li Zongjio. When he pointed the Thousand Slaughter Sword in his hand, the surrounding space seemed to be cut open. There was no way to block Sky Wu's power, so it shattered. Facing Sky Wu's attack, Li Zongjio only raised his hand. When he raised his hand, his right hand seemed to faintly reveal the power of the Blood Dragon's soul hidden under his arm. Even the Blood Dragon's soul directly merged into Li Zongjio's body. Clang! Li Zongjio stretched out his hand and directly grabbed the Thousand Slaughter Sword in Sky Wu's hand. At this moment, the shattered space around him also gradually recovered. This was a battle of strength. No matter how tyrannical the opponent's power was, even if the space was shattered, Li Zongjio could repair the shattered space with a light move. Is that all you have? Li Zongjio said disdainfully. Li Zongjio never liked to waste too much time on battles. After grabbing the Thousand Slaughter Sword, his palm struck toward Sky Wu's head. Sky Wu had no time to pay attention to the Thousand Slaughter Sword. He immediately gave up on the sword and rushed back. However, Li Zongjio's palm was faster than expected. It directly hit Sky Wu's body and accelerated him backward. Bang! He flew tens of thousands of meters away. He even crashed into a mountain 10,000 meters away, creating a human-shaped tunnel. Sky Wu was extremely angry after being hit by the palm. He immediately grabbed the mountain that was more than 100 feet in front of him and lifted it up. He immediately lifted the mountain and smashed it toward Li Zongjio. Moving mountains at the slightest move. Only Supreme Being experts could reach this level. If the two of them were to fight in a city, any city would be destroyed. It would be reduced to a pile of ruins. After approaching, Sky Wu also smashed the mountain in his hand toward Li Zongjio. Boom! The friction between the mountain and the air could be seen at the top of the mountain, causing intense sparks to erupt. Li Zongjio casually tossed the Thousand Slaughter Sword to the side, and his figure flashed away. Burning Desolation Fist. Li Zongjio rushed to the mountain and suddenly smashed down with his fist. The mountain in front of him immediately shattered. It exploded one after another. The power spread out in all directions. Boom! The mountain shattered into countless pieces of stone. At this moment, Sky Wu had already approached Li Zongjio and was about to launch a sneak attack on Li Zongjio. However, Li Zongjio grabbed him by the throat. "You're too slow." Li Zongjio locked Sky Wu's throat. Staring at Li Zongjio's eyes at close range, Sky Wu seemed to feel that his strength was constantly overdrawing and leaking out. It was as if his body had become a very large ball with a hole in it. It was continuously dispersing its own power in all directions. Sky Wu could clearly feel that Li Zongjio was currently devouring his strength. How could an ordinary human have such strength? What was Li Zongjio's background? He was the energy incarnation of an ancient demon. The sacred ancestor of the devil race had used this method to escape being sealed. Because his body had split into two, he was no longer a true devil. In fact, the current Sky Shaman had already refined the power of the human race. He had perfectly merged the two forces into one. One had to admit that the demon race was a very tenacious race. However, in front of Li Zongjio, this big pervert, they had no chance of turning the tables. Remember this sovereign's name, Evil Lord. Li Zongjio completely refined Sky Wu's strength. When he came out of the blood pool, Li Zongjio's strength had already entered the Supreme Being realm. But now, Sky Wu's absorption of the blood pool's energy had yet to truly merge. Of course, he couldn't resist Li Zongjio's devouring power. The demon race is indestructible. As soon as Sky Wu's voice fell, Li Zongjio absorbed all of his strength. Sky Wu's corpse didn't immediately disappear. Instead, it tried to use the last bit of the demon's origin energy to escape. However, something flew out from Li Zongjio's chest and instantly collected the last bit of origin energy. The demon-suppressing ruler. The object that flew out was precisely the demon-suppressing ruler. After collecting Sky Wu's corpse, the demon-suppressing ruler automatically returned to Li Zongjio's chest. This demon-suppressing ruler is a little interesting. Li Zongjio was a little uncertain about the demon-suppressing ruler and Black Dragon Hammer. These two things seemed to have their own spirituality. Now, Li Zongjio's strength wasn't enough to completely control them. This made Li Zongjio extremely unconvinced. However, one day he would definitely let the demon-suppressing ruler and Black Dragon Hammer display their true power in his hands. At this point, Sky Wu's bloodline was completely destroyed. No one watched this unprecedented battle. This battle was even brought forward several thousand years. Originally, Sky Wu should have become a true supreme being, even dominating the entire Xingwu continent for a period of time. Now, he was reduced to a pile of ashes. Even his corpse wasn't left. It was suppressed by the demon-suppressing ruler. Otherwise, Sky Wu's body would have been left outside. If the demon race contributed their strength, Sky Wu would have been resurrected again. Ding! A storage ring fell to the ground. Li Zongjio stepped forward and held it in his hand, carefully observing it. A demon's storage ring. Chapter 1148. Li Zongjio looked at the demon clan's storage ring in his hand. It exuded a sharp aura. When Li Zongjio opened the contents of the storage ring and admired it, he was shocked by Wu Tian's collection. How many resources did this bastard take? Even with Li Zongjio's experience, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Grade 6 herbs were the lowest grade, but there was a dazzling array of them, piled up like a mountain. Grade 7 herbs exceeded 30,000. Even the 8th grade medicinal herbs had reached 8,000 in value. As for the grade 9 herbs that Li Zongjio dreamed of, there were close to 1,000 of them, some of which were even 100,000 years old. This collection was comparable to Li Zongjio's collection in his previous life when he was at his peak. Of course, in the process of collecting them, many of them were refined into elixirs. This was an immeasurable value. Damn it, how many resources did he waste? Li Zongjio wished he could grab Wu Tian and stab him a few times. This was simply a waste of resources. Fortunately, Li Zongjio held these things in his hands. Fortunately, I came to save you. At least I have something to do now. Li Zongjio was extremely gratified. Immediately, his figure rose into the air. With a flick of his finger, a flame energy landed on the ground. The surrounding area was set ablaze. After all, he didn't know if there were any remnants of the demon clan hiding here. It was better to burn the place first. Otherwise, the demon clan would be very difficult to deal with. They would revive at the drop of a hat. No one knew where these demons got such a strong and vigorous life force from. With the 1,000 slaughter sword, Li Zongjio directly flew towards the sacred flame royal city. Boom! Once Xiao Chen's figure disappeared, the flames below would automatically extinguish after burning for 3 days and 3 nights. Sacred Flame Royal City. Li Zongjio's return made everyone in the White Deer Mansion excited. However, Xiao Zhao had already instructed that the young master's whereabouts couldn't be easily revealed. Everyone had to keep it a secret. Li Zongjio's hasty return didn't affect the White Deer Mansion too much. For example, Li Zongjio didn't need to personally worry about the 14th prince. The White Deer Mansion had already made their stance clear. They would support the 14th prince. Many of the family heads in the city also took their positions. First was the Qi clan of the 4 great clans. Originally, the Qi family wouldn't be involved in the imperial court. However, after some consideration, Qi Shaohun made the announcement without hesitation. This was because the Qi family was now tied to Li Zongjio's White Deer Mansion. With the Qi family's current state, they needed to continue making breakthroughs. Otherwise, they would only be stuck in their old ways. Sooner or later, he would be eliminated. After that, the Zhao clan, one of the 4 great clans, also had a strong inclination. The Shi clan was relatively low-key. They tried their best not to get involved in the imperial court. However, if they really needed to show their stance, they would still follow the Qi clan. Among the 4 great clans, the Zhao clan was closely behind the White Deer Mansion. In the end, the White Deer Mansion had many collaborations. As for the last clan, the Jiang clan, they were gradually unable to keep up with the pace. However, they were all business families after all. They valued harmony. It was extremely unwise to cause a massacre in the Sacred Flame Royal City. Next was Wang Ding. He had successfully become the commander of the City Guard Legion. Although he couldn't be considered to be able to cover the sky with a single hand, the White Deer Mansion was still a force to be reckoned with in the entire Sacred Flame Imperial City. Moreover, in most cases, Li Zongjio didn't want to be the emperor. Otherwise, he could have directly entered the palace and easily removed Emperor Xingyan's head. After giving a few instructions, Li Zongjio began to cultivate in his cultivation room. First, he stole most of the energy from the blood pool. Then, he absorbed Wu Tian's energy. Therefore, he needed to refine it properly. This time, Li Zongjio cultivated in seclusion for a total of 20 days. 3rd grade sovereign. I guess I've recovered 20% of my strength from my previous life. Li Zongjio felt his current state. Now that his strength had recovered, Li Zongjio finally felt a sense of security. In this life, his cultivation had recovered a little too quickly. Now, he needed to stabilize his strength. Although Li Zongjio desperately wanted to break through to the absolute saint realm, he also knew the importance of stabilizing his strength. If he was too anxious to reach the heavens in a single step, he would end up like Wu Tian. He wouldn't be able to control the strength in his body at all. He tried to use the myriad beast blood pool to increase his strength, but even if he forcefully increased his strength, it wouldn't be very powerful. Only by truly controlling one's strength could it be considered his own strength. The blood dragon soul has reached the sovereign realm. As for the other 2 dragon souls, I still need to put in some effort. Li Zongjio naturally had a way to increase the white dragon soul's mental strength by refining pills. However, if he wanted to increase the golden dragon soul's mental strength, he had to find an extreme external environment to give himself pressure to break through. First, I'll reach the sovereign realm within half a year. Then, I'll see how Yanran is doing. If she comes back, I'll be able to go to the Eldritch Land and find more pressure to break through the ancient golden body technique. Li Zongjio already had plans in mind. In the palace, Emperor Xian was also very angry about the recent events in the White Deer Mansion. Previously, the White Deer Mansion was still well behaved. Although they killed many influential people in the city, they were all people that Emperor Xian wanted to get rid of. Who knew that the White Deer Mansion would become more and more excessive? They directly interfered with the fight for the position of Crown Prince. Did they want the future of Emperor Xingyan's empire to become Li Zongjiu's wedding dress? Therefore, Emperor Xingyan hurriedly sought out the military advisor. Military advisor, look, I've already said that Li Zongjiu will become a disaster. He has already begun to influence the overall situation of our dynasty. In the future, no one in our dynasty will be able to suppress him. Emperor Xingyan was clearly very angry. The military advisor was also in a difficult position. Although Li Zongjiu had no intention of competing for the throne, his strength had already affected the stability of his dynasty. There were even some officials who had begun to gradually contact the White Deer Mansion and follow the lead of the White Deer Mansion. I'll look for him again and make a decision on this matter, the military advisor said. Li Zongjiu's influence was great. It was said that he had already established a great foundation in the Haiku dynasty. The news that came back was enough to make them pay attention. If Li Zongjiu really had any special intentions, then they could only fight a decisive battle with Li Zongjiu. Even if they had to pay a great price, they had to eliminate Li Zongjiu. That shameless brat actually wants to propose marriage to me. After dealing with Li Zongjiu, we'll take the opportunity to eliminate Kuan Castle. He has kept Kuan Castle for too long and has forgotten his own worth. He actually dares to reach his hands into the bloodline of the imperial family. Emperor Xingyan said coldly. Recently, that damned Kuan Erasure relied on the White Deer Mansion and Kuan Castle as his backing. He actually wanted to propose marriage to Princess Jingon. Even when this matter was spread, many people in the royal city came to watch the show. This was Emperor Xingyan's only daughter. One could imagine how great Kuan Arashi's power and status would be if he married Princess Jingon. Among these princes, no one knew how many would survive in the end. However, because of the special nature of Kuan Castle's identity, Kuan Arashi's actions were quite willful. It might bring disaster to Kuan Castle. Speaking of which, Lan Kuan was also very worried recently. Because he had been collecting protection fees all day long, Kuan Erasure had a rich foundation. In addition, his recent cultivation breakthrough was not bad, and he had made some achievements in the area of elixirs. Under the influence of love, he directly wanted to propose marriage to Princess Jingon. She was Shueyu. Who would have thought that after Shueyu had just spoken to her imperial father, she would be directly confined? At the same time, a few experts among the imperial bodyguards came to warn Kuan Erasure. They told Kuan Erasure not to ask for a rebuff. At the same time, they told him to think for his family and not to cause more trouble. Otherwise, he would have to bear the consequences. Although the original words were not like this, the meaning was very accurate. Kuan Erasure, who was depressed, was also a little discouraged. Recently, he had been drinking in the Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Tower and had become an alcoholic. Palace Master Yun Qi saw Kuan Arashi's state and felt a little helpless. It was too easy to attack a man. If you drink here every day, will your woman be able to return to your side? What's the use even if I work hard? Kuan Erasure was drunk in the wine jar. That day, they naturally fought. Kuan Erasure was easily crushed by the other party. No matter how brave he was, it was useless. If he couldn't win, he couldn't win. If he wasn't qualified, he wasn't qualified. What? A mere imperial palace is blocking your way? If that's the case, I'll tear down the walls of this palace tonight. A voice came from the door. When he heard this voice, Kuan Arashi's entire body quivered. Bus. Chapter 1149. Kuan Erasure got up. Although he was drunk, he instantly sobered up when he heard Li Zongjiu's voice. After getting up, Kuan Erasure looked quite ashamed. The wine had caused his body to fall into a state of overdraft. He had been in such a drunken state for the past few days, but Kuan Erasure did not feel relieved at all. On the contrary, drinking to drown his sorrows became even more sorrowful. Li Zongjio also just learned about this matter. It was Xiao Zhao who mentioned it to him. Originally, Li Zongjio wanted to refine elixirs, but he put everything aside and came to find Kuan Erisher. Knowing that the latter was depressed, Li Zongjio did not say much. He just sat on the ground, picked up a bottle of wine and drank with Kuan Erisher. It's normal for young people to suffer a little setback. Li Zongjio said with a smile. The reason why Kuan Erisher did not seek Li Zongjio's help was not difficult to guess. Now, Li Zongjio's White Deer Mansion had become a thorn in the imperial court side because of its own development. If he started at this time, Li Zongjio might be placed on the opposite side of the imperial court. For Kuan Erisher, this was something that should not be done. Kuan Erisher also smiled bitterly and drank with Li Zongjio. When Palace Master Yun Qi saw the two brothers, she felt that they were like brothers in distress. Li Zongjio was now in a high position, but he was still so close to Kuan Erisher and did such a boring thing. It could be seen that Li Zongjio was really a sincere person. She ordered her subordinates to cook a table of good dishes for the two brothers. If you two want to drink, drink well. Lady boss, bring out the best wine you have in your shop. Li Zongjio greeted him. Yun Qi bowed slightly and then went to open his wine cellar. At the same time, he took out a jar of 18-year-old new Hong. Among all the types of wine, this wine was undoubtedly the best. When it came to new Hong, the best wine was 18 years old. It would be too old if it was older and too young if it was younger. Pass down the order. The Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Pavilion is not open to the public today. Yes, madam. Han Shuang and Han Shui were also helpers in the Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Pavilion. When they were outside, they were called Lady Boss, but when they were inside, they were called Palace Master. However, the fragrance of the Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Inn's wine had long since spread far and wide. Even many celebrities in the royal city liked to have fun here. Now, because of Li Zongjio's arrival, the inn had to be temporarily closed. It could be seen that Palace Master Yun Qi valued Li Zongjio. However, some people would not give up just because the Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Inn was closed. Shimin Shuifeng had already boasted that he would book the entire Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Inn and hold a celebratory banquet for a minister in the imperial court. In the end, when Shimin Shuifeng came with a large group of people, he was told that the Spring Flower and Autumn Moon Inn was temporarily closed. Wasn't this a direct slap to Shimin Shuifeng's face? The Shimin clan that Shimin Shuifeng belonged to. It was a clan that had recently risen, and its rise was quite fast. In the blink of an eye, the territory and business chain it had taken in the city was almost comparable to the four great clans. Some people had even begun to call the Shimin clan the fifth great clan. The fifth great clan had appeared in the royal city because of the Shimin clan's participation. Some people had also heard that only a small part of the Shimin clan had come to the city and started to build a business chain. They were quite outstanding in all aspects and had already established many connections. Today's banquet was hosted by a group of civil officials. As long as this official stamped his seal and received the approval, the Shimin clan would be able to gain a firm foothold in the royal city. The other party naturally demanded an exorbitant price, and this matter was most likely settled. Who would have thought that at the last moment, this would actually happen? Wasn't this clearly a slap to the Shimin clan's face? Ask your lady boss to come out. I want to see who dares to book the Shimin clan's place. So many people were blocked outside the door. If he did not show his power today, the Shimin clan would not be able to survive in the future. Most importantly, if he were to be slapped in the face today, this business deal would most likely be ruined. Shimin Shuifeng turned around and smiled apologetically at the minister who already had a bad expression. Lord Chu, don't worry. The Shimin clan will handle this matter properly. It's best to settle it quickly. Official Chu didn't have a good expression on his face. He, the dignified secretariat, was actually left hanging at the door. Everything was blamed on Shimin Blowing Feng. If he didn't properly handle this matter today, then there would be no need to mention what would happen in the future. As for the small things that he had received previously, he naturally would not return them. He could also use this opportunity to extort another sum of money. Yes. Lord Chu, don't worry. Shimin Shuifeng apologized. Then he directly ordered someone to break down the door. Ever since the 9th prince's accident here, it was said that the spring flower and autumn moon in was no longer under the 9th prince's protection. Therefore, some people's behavior here became more unbridled. However, because of the 9th prince's remaining power, they did not dare to act recklessly. But today, Shimin Shuifeng himself was riding a tiger and could not back down. If he did not give an explanation today, tens of billions of purple yuan transactions would directly go down the drain. Li Zongjio and Kun Erisher were drinking wine and the surroundings were quiet. Suddenly, someone directly kicked open the door of the spring flower and autumn moon inn. Palace Master Yun Qi, who was waiting at the side, also stood up slightly and prepared to deal with this situation. Didn't they say that they were no longer receiving guests? Could it be that these people did not understand human language? No need for you. We'll take care of it ourselves. Li Zongjio indicated for Palace Master Yun Qi to sit down. Palace Master Yun Qi naturally would not ignore Li Zongjio's intentions. The lives of Zishuan court were basically saved by Li Zongjio's help. If it wasn't for Li Zongjio's help back then, Zishuan court would have already ceased to exist. Moreover, the moon god art that Palace Master Yun Qi was currently cultivating was also given to her by Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio's kindness to Zishuan court was also greater than the heavens. Today, I, Shimin Shuifeng, want to entertain distinguished guests here. Who booked this place? I, Shimin Shuifeng, am willing to pay 10 times the price. Please bear the pain and part with your treasures. After Shimin Shuifeng and the others rushed in, they were not in a hurry to make a move. They shouted to the front. Scram! Don't disturb this young master's drinking. Kun Erisher directly threw out the wine jar in his hand. With a bang, it smashed in front of Shimin Shuifeng and the others. Immediately, an primitive emperor beside Shimin Shuifeng stepped forward and shielded Shimin Shuifeng behind him. Young man, you must pay attention to your manners when you're outside. The primitive emperor said faintly. If you don't scram, I'll close the door and beat the dog. Kun Erisher stood up shakily. The wine made Kun Arashi's eyes dizzy, and he could not see clearly how many people were in front of him. Blurry figures could be seen everywhere. Such a drunkard could be pinched to death with just a finger. However, it was not good to kill people in the imperial city, especially during such a special period. Therefore, if they could solve it with words, they should try to solve it with words and not resort to violence. 2 drunkards. Just give them some money and throw it out. You must be the lady boss. Put the bill of these 2 on me. In addition, you can prepare for the opening performance. Bring out your best performance, I don't care how much it costs. Shimin Shuifeng said heroically. Immediately, 2 of his men came forward and lifted Kun Erisher. Just as they were about to throw Kun Erisher out, Kun Erisher suddenly made a move. The 2 men who came forward to drag Kun Erisher were not weak either. They were in the Yuan King realm, but their strength was not as strong as Kun Erisher. Although they were drunk, when Kun Erisher made a move, it was difficult for them to resist. Bang bang. The 2 of them fell to the ground. I don't want to leave yet. Kun Erisher had been suppressing his anger for a long time. Now that Shimin Shuifeng and the others had taken the initiative to come to him, he took advantage of the drunkenness to start a fight with the people in front of him. At first, Kun Arashi's guards were not strong enough to fight with Kun Erisher. After getting drunk, Kun Arashi's strength was surprisingly great. He injured a few of the other party's guards in succession. Finally, the primitive emperor could not help but make a move. With a slap, Kun Erisher fell to the ground. After rolling a few times, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of wine. He spat out the wine he had just drunk on the floor. You are courting death. The primitive emperor was still unwilling to stop. He stepped forward again and kicked Kun Arashi's face, causing Kun Erisher to slide on the floor and hit the steps with a bang. This caused the wine cup in Li Zongjio's hand to shake slightly. After seeing this, Palace Master Yun Qi could not help but glance at Li Zongjio. She was also wondering what Li Zongjio's intention was. Get up and continue fighting with him. Li Zongjio said faintly. Kun Erisher also struggled to get up. The primitive emperor had obviously used a lot of strength and kicked Kun Arashi's nose until it was crooked. Again, Kun Arashi's temper flared up all of a sudden. Since he had already made a move, there would be no mercy. The primitive emperor turned back and glanced at Shimin Chuefeng. He saw Shimin Chuefeng waving his hand as if he was shooing away a fly. Break his legs and throw him out from the back door. Don't scare Lord Chu. Chapter 1150. After receiving the order, the primitive emperor expert's face had a trace of coldness as he stared at Kun Arashir in front of him. A brat who didn't know the difference between life and death actually dared to give orders in front of him, and at the same time, wanted to challenge his authority. Then, I'll let you know what the dignity of an primitive emperor expert is. You can't be offended. This person stretched out his hand, and his yuan power turned into a long whip in his hand. On the golden whip, there were small spikes one after another. If it were to fall on a person's body, it would definitely split open the person's skin and flesh. Such a wound would fester if it was slightly careless. But the long whip drew out a muffled sound in the air and directly swung towards Kun Arashi's leg. Kun Arashir was naturally tied up by the opponent and then fiercely fell to the ground. Bang! Immediately, one of Kun Arashi's legs was broken. Although it was painful, Kun Arashir had a hearty feeling. Although his leg was broken, Kun Arashir didn't cry out and only silently endured it, enduring the pain as he climbed up. In the next second, he was thrown out again and smashed onto the ground. This time, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. When the expert saw Li Zongjio, who was still minding his own business and drinking wine, he had a feeling of anger because from the beginning to the end, this brat had been ignoring him. Courting death. The long whip swung towards Li Zongjio's face from more than 10 meters away. This whip must make Li Zongjio remember this lesson. In the future, when he meets others outside, he must remember to be civilized and polite. But just as the whip was about to land on Li Zongjio's body, Kun Arashir came out of nowhere. He blocked the attack of the whip for Li Zongjio. When the whip landed on Kun Arashi's face, it immediately tore open his skin and flesh, and even a few drops of blood flew into Kun Arashi's eyes, dyeing them red. You can hit me, but he's my boss. Kun Arashir naturally knew that Li Zongjio could block the whip, but he still rushed out without hesitation and blocked the whip for Li Zongjio. At this moment he finally sobered up a little. Because he was drunk just now, he didn't even know what had happened to his body and how badly he had been ravaged by the other party. Now that he had sobered up and checked his body, he was furious. You're courting death. He had held back time and time again, which was giving this brat face. He actually dared to challenge him. Immediately, the whip in his hand swung toward Lan Kuan's head with a speed and strength that was 10 times faster than before. This blow was enough to break Kun Arashi's head, but Kun Arashir still stood in the same place, not moving his feet, and staring at the person in front of him. At the critical moment, a hand blocked the whip of the primitive emperor expert, and with a gentle pull, the person opposite him was pulled over. The primitive emperor expert couldn't believe that he couldn't control his body. The opponent seemed to have a very strong person, so he couldn't resist this move, and his whole body flew towards Kun Arashir. Kun Arashir naturally raised his hand and punched him in the face. With a punch, the primitive emperor expert fell to the ground. Bang! Kun Arashir turned his head and looked at Li Zongjio beside him. Although he was beaten up, Kun Arashir felt very happy. Because after today's experience, he seemed to have found a kind of feeling, a direction. Shimin Chuefeng saw that the number 1 expert under his command was seriously injured by the 2 brats opposite him. He didn't know what demonic technique they used, but he was furious. He immediately became angry. You 2 brats dare to be enemies with my Shimin clan. Today, I will let you see the power of my Shimin clan. Shimin Chuefeng directly took out a command arrow from his bosom and prepared to call for help. Stop! Official Chu, who had been waiting outside the door, walked in. He was already very angry that he had to wait for so long at the door. After such a long time, the matter still hadn't been resolved. His ability was really lacking. Official Chu had walked in to show off his face. However, when Official Chu walked in, he found that there was something wrong with the scene. Because the person standing in front of him looked somewhat familiar. Official Chu, there is no need for you to deal with such a small matter, Shimin Chuefeng hurriedly said to Official Chu. Unexpectedly, Official Chu didn't even look at him. His eyes were fixed on Li Zongjio in front of him. Suddenly, Official Chu's brain seemed to have been struck by lightning. This lowly official greets Lord State Preceptor. After seeing Li Zongjio's face clearly, Official Chu quickly took a few steps forward and knelt down in front of Li Zongjio. He continuously kowtowed, and his body was completely bent. Imperial tutor? Shimin Chuefeng and the others had been in the sacred flame royal city for several months. Previously, they had heard that there was an influential person in the city, a very young imperial tutor. It was said that even Emperor Xingyan had to give him some face. Therefore, when the people of the Shimin clan arrived, they hurriedly brought gifts to visit the White Deer Mansion. However, the gifts were accepted, but they didn't even get to meet the person in question. This was considered normal. After all, if one didn't have a name or a surname, why would the person want to meet them? However, the etiquette had already arrived, and they had more or less met face to face. Who would have thought that they would actually meet the person in question here today? Shimin Chuefeng felt as if a bolt of lightning had struck him. He couldn't even straighten his back. When he heard these words, he felt as if a large basin of water had been splashed on him. This time he was done for. For the sake of Official Chu, he had actually offended the current imperial tutor. He reckoned that he was going to die. Imperial tutor. This lowly one didn't know that it was imperial tutor who was here. Please forgive me, imperial tutor. A large group of people directly knelt down along with Shimin Chuefeng. Li Zongjio glanced at the people kneeling in front of him. After a glance, he retracted his gaze and looked at Kuan Erasher beside him. Is there anything difficult in this world that you and I can't overcome? If you give up now, then you really won't be able to overcome anything. Li Zongjio said indifferently. Kuan Erasher lowered his head in shame. Li Zongjio was right. He was too anxious. This kind of thing shouldn't have happened. Where is that girl Shuewen now? Since Li Zongjio had interfered in this matter, then he had to take care of it to the end. Who was this Emperor Xian? Li Zongjio's brother wanted to marry his daughter, so he should obediently hand over his daughter. Chapter 1151. Hearing Li Zongjio's question, Kuan Erasher was also surprised, and then he said, "She went to talk to Emperor Xingyan about our engagement, and then she was locked in the palace. Then she came out." Kuan Erasher said helplessly. He sighed. Within the inner palace, there were countless experts. Moreover, a place like the Imperial Palace was not a place that anyone could casually enter. Moreover, the Watermoon Palace Master's residence was an important place in her boudoir. Ordinary people would not be allowed to approach it. Kuan Erasher didn't have any official position, so he naturally couldn't go in. Then do you want to take her away, or do you want me to put some pressure on Emperor Xingyan so that he will marry his daughter to you? Li Zongjio said this in front of everyone. When the name of Emperor Xingyan was mentioned, Official Chu almost directly knelt down. After all, this was the name of the great emperor, and it couldn't be casually talked about. If it was passed to Emperor Xingyan's ears, he would exterminate your entire family in minutes. And what Li Zongjio said just now was to put some pressure on Emperor Xingyan. Shimin Chuefeng and the others knelt on the ground, trembling. The strength of this imperial tutor in front of them seemed to be more terrifying than they imagined. "I'm fine with anything, but I'm mainly asking for Shui Yu's opinion," Kuan Erasher said with a frown. Kuan Erasher knew that Li Zongjio always meant what he said. So as long as Li Zongjio said it, he would definitely do it. You just need to choose. Then let's go ask that girl's opinion first. You're from the imperial court, right? Li Zongjio asked Official Chu, who was kneeling down. Previously, he had heard that this person had some background. Yes, I'm Chu He, the head of the Seal Bureau, a third-rank official. Third-rank minister. A third-rank official should be qualified to enter the palace, right? Then you can lead us in. Li Zongjio said. Soon after, he said to the people of Shimin clan, I am not interested to know how powerful your Shimin clan is. However, as for the things that were broken today, If there is a compensation for the damages, you can deal with it yourself. Of course not, of course not. Leave it all to me. Don't worry, Lord Imperial Tutor. Shimin Blowing Wind said repeatedly. They didn't even dare to raise their heads to look at Li Zongjio. They were afraid that Li Zongjio would get angry and seek revenge on them. But now, it seemed that Li Zongjio didn't care about them. It was really unpredictable. The latter's temper was indeed quite strange. He really deserved to be called the Evil Lord. Recently, the name of the Evil Lord began to spread in the Sacred Flame Imperial City. Because the things that Li Zongjio did in the Heike dynasty would spread to the Shengyan dynasty within a few days. Not to mention, it was a rumor about a peerless expert, which made people even more excited. Take care, Lord Imperial Tutor. Palace Master Yunqi looked at Shimin Blowing Wind, who was acting like a lackey in front of her. She also felt that this person in front of her was extremely ridiculous. However, there were countless people like him. Most of them had the same temperament. They were arrogant and domineering when they had a little bit of ability. I'll give you a discount for the broken tables and chairs and a few jars of good wine. I'll give you 30 million. Palace Master Yunqi said lightly. What, 30 million? When Shimin Chue Feng heard this, he immediately became excited again. Do you think that 30 million fell from the sky? You actually said it just like that. Do you have no shame? Purple yuan. Palace Master Yunqi continued calmly. Originally, 30 million gold coins was already an astronomical figure. Now, the value was increased by 100 times. Now, he directly asked for 30 million purple yuan. This was really robbery. However, Palace Master Yunqi's warning gaze seemed to be telling Shimin Blowing Wind that if he didn't pay up, she would tell Li Zongjio about this matter. In the end, the pitiful Shimin Blowing Wind could only helplessly fork out the money. Although he admitted defeat, his heart was still pained when he gave up such a large sum of money. With Shimin Blowing Wind's reckless temper, who knew how many people he would offend in the Sacred Flame Imperial City? Shimin Blowing Wind probably still didn't know the relationship between the spring flower and autumn moon in and Li Zongjio. Therefore, it could be said that he was unscrupulous at the entrance and spoke without thinking. If this continued, who knew what kind of trouble would occur? In an extremely noble carriage, Li Zongjio, Kun Erisher, and Chu He were heading towards the Imperial Palace. Although he didn't know why Li Zongjio and the others were going to the Imperial Palace at this time, he didn't dare to ask. The carriage was arranged by Westgate Blowing Wind. It was from a carriage rental center in the city. Sometimes, in order to receive some VIPs, they would need to use some extremely noble carriages. If one's own family prepared a carriage, it would seem a bit wasteful. Therefore, these places that rented carriages were also very popular, as long as the quality and service were good enough. My 3 lords, the area in front is sealed off. The carriages outside are not allowed to enter. I can only send you here. I will wait for you here. The coachman was a polite young man. Li Zongjio rewarded him with a 10,000 purple yuan banknote. Thank you, my lord. 10,000 purple yuan was almost his entire income for the past few years. It was simply a windfall that fell from the sky. Stop. The Imperial Palace is under curfew. Civil and military officials are not allowed to enter without an imperial decree. Along the way, there were hundreds of imperial guards on guard. They were stopped as soon as they got off the carriage. In the distance, there were still patrols patrolling back and forth. It was airtight. This imperial city was clearly a heavily guarded prison. How dare you? Are you blind? You even dare to stop Lord Imperial Tutor. Chu He went up and scolded. However, he was a civil official, so he didn't make a move. If he was a military general, he would probably rush up and give this ignorant Imperial Guard a beating. When the Imperial Guard saw Li Zongjio, they were all shocked. They quickly knelt down on one knee. Greetings, Lord Imperial Tutor. Li Zongjio had never been to the Imperial Palace before, so he didn't know that his title of Imperial Grandmaster was so useful. He didn't do anything, but he was given the title of Imperial Grandmaster for no reason. Therefore, he immediately walked out and showed his face a little, which was more useful than any token. Because of Li Zongjio's special identity, These imperial guards had to recognize Li Zongjio's appearance. This way, they wouldn't be unable to recognize him when they saw him. Chu He was in the same situation just now. He recognized him because he had seen him in the information book before. May I know why Lord Imperial Tutor is visiting so late at night? We can go and report to him. Chu He was furious when he heard this. You brat, it seems like you haven't died before. How dare you stop me? Alright, how about this? Ask the Emperor to come out and see me. I have something to tell him. Li Zongjio stopped Chu He from getting angry and said directly. When the soldier heard this, he and his companions looked at each other. What kind of operation was this? He actually wanted Emperor Xingyan to come out and see him? Did he make a mistake? He actually dared to say such disgraceful words. However, they didn't dare to do anything. Could it be that they were going to let Li Zongjio be captured just because of one sentence? In the end, the soldier hurriedly made way for Li Zongjio and the others. Compared to asking the Emperor Xingyan to come out and see Li Zongjio, it was better to let Li Zongjio go in directly. What happened after that would have nothing to do with him. After entering the imperial palace, the surrounding scenery didn't change much compared to 3,000 years later. It wasn't the first time Li Zongjio came to the imperial palace. However, when he came to the imperial palace in his previous life, the scene was quite big. Who knew how many people were lining up to welcome Li Zongjio? None of the civil and military officials were left behind. All of them were standing neatly. The courtyard where Shueyu was located was called Qiushui Garden. There were many places in the imperial palace that officials couldn't enter. There were many palace maids and even some noble concubines' residences. The emperor had a harem of 3,000. It was inevitable that something would happen. Therefore, it had to be restricted from the route. If they were found to have trespassed into these places, they would be severely punished. Lord Imperial Tutor, Qiushui Garden is right in front. It's not convenient for us to enter. Otherwise, we will be punished. However, with your status, it shouldn't be a problem. At this moment, Chu He was also very regretful. However, he was already riding a tiger and couldn't get off. If Emperor Xingyan held him accountable, he would definitely not be able to escape death. However, whether or not Emperor Xingyan would ask was another matter. It was much better than offending Li Zongjio directly. At least now, he could live. Alright, you can go. Li Zongjio waved his hand and signaled for Chu He to leave. He went forward together with Kuan Erasher and was once again stopped by the guards. Stop, the princess courtyard. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter. A group of female guards appeared in front of the two of them. Each of them had a murderous look in their eyes and looked extremely fierce. Chapter 1152. A group of female guards stood in front of Li Zongjio. Judging from their attire, they should be from the regular army. No wonder Shueyu couldn't escape even after half a day had passed. It seemed like Emperor Xingyan had put in a lot of effort. It's the Xuanwu army, Kuan Erasher said. Seeing the insignia on their chests, he knew that they were wearing soft armor. Therefore, when Kuan Erashi's gaze moved, it naturally landed on some unsightly positions. You're courting death. As soon as the female guard in the lead gave the order, all of them rushed forward, clamoring that they had to at least take down Lan Kuan and Li Zongjio. Kuan Erasher was shocked. If they fought, it would definitely attract more imperial guards. At that time, it would be like poking a hornet's nest. More and more experts would come after hearing the news. Unexpectedly, Li Zongjio waved his hand at these people. The female guards in front of him had all disappeared. They had all disappeared on the spot. Not even the slightest sound was left. Kuan Erasher was shocked. How did you do that? You will also have the domain ability of an Origin Emperor expert. Quickly go in. Li Zongjio temporarily threw these people into the spiritual domain, causing their minds to fall into a state of chaos. At this moment, they were all unconscious. If someone was strong enough, it wasn't difficult to stay awake. Kuan Erasher and Li Zongjio swaggered in. Li Zongjio basically took care of everyone he saw. He threw them all in. And in this unique building, Kuan Erasher finally saw his beloved. Li Zongjio naturally didn't disturb the lovebirds. He meditated in the courtyard, waiting for the two to finish their discussion before coming up with a countermeasure. Previously, when Li Zongjio made his move, no one in the entire palace sensed any abnormality. Even the experts of the palace didn't have any reaction at all. Li Zongjio didn't need to be so sneaky, but in order to prevent some troublesome things from happening, it was better to keep a low profile. Boss, Kun Erisher shouted at Li Zongjio. Boss. Shuiwei also said crisply in front of Li Zongjio. Have you two decided to elope? Shuiwei blushed when she heard these words. She shyly hid behind Kun Erisher. The girl agreed to go with me. She's willing to wander the world. But after thinking about it, I can't let a girl be so helpless and insecure. So I've decided to return to Kun Castle and obtain the position of the Castellan of Kun Castle. Then I'll propose marriage to Emperor Shingen. Kun Erisher said. His face was full of pride. All right, it's up to you. Li Zongjio didn't care. He didn't choose which one would make Li Zongjio look down on Kun Erisher. It was good for young people to have their own ideas. Anyway, no matter what, they would regret it in the future. It was fine as long as they didn't regret it now. The most important thing was to live well now. Girl, you have to wait for me. Kun Erisher said to Shuiwei seriously. Shuiwei also nodded heavily. She was indescribably touched as she nestled in Kun Arashi's arms. In fact, Shuiwei would be willing to follow Kun Erisher no matter what. But if Kun Erisher could marry her officially, she would be even happier. All right, you're so lovey-dovey. Why don't you sleep here tonight? Li Zongjio teased. Even Kun Erisher, who was thick-skinned and dark-skinned, couldn't help but blush. We're both good children. After the two of them chatted for a while, Li Zongjio and Kun Erisher left the palace together. After seeing Kun Erisher, Shuiwei's mood obviously changed. She became more cheerful. But when she saw the guards in the courtyard, she didn't know where they went. After a while, Shuiwei saw the guards reappear in the courtyard. Princess, be careful. When the guards came to their senses, they quickly ran to Shuiwei and protected Princess Jingon. Just a moment ago, two audacious bandits had dared to come here. But what had happened just now had left these elites of the Xuanwu army rather confused. Why were they so dizzy? They had no idea what was going on. Later, they appeared in the courtyard. They were worried that the princess was in danger and were certain that these two bandits had come to harm her. Fortunately, the princess was in good condition and had not encountered any danger. Where did all of you run off to? You've neglected your duties. Do you believe that I won't report today's matter to Imperial Father and have him punish you? Princess Jingon was making things difficult for them. After all, these people were usually rather arrogant. If she didn't seize this chance to teach them a lesson, they would think that Princess Jingon was easy to bully. Princess, please calm your anger. We also don't know what's going on. The captain of the guards hastily got down on his knees. Today's matter was extremely serious. Li Zongjio had thrown them into another courtyard, so how could they dare to report such a bizarre incident? If Princess Jingyan reported this matter to Sacred Flame Emperor, he would definitely be held accountable. At that time, the punishment from the army would be quite severe. It's good that you know your wrongs. In the future, behave yourselves. You're all dismissed. Princess Jingon waved her hand. Immediately, these guards retreated as if they had been pardoned from a death sentence. Phew. Fortunately, the princess didn't fly into a rage, but today's events were truly strange. The captain of the Xuanwu army, Fang Weiyang, thought to herself. For someone to do such a thing in front of her, Fang Weiyang was naturally extremely displeased. She had to thoroughly investigate this matter. Fang Weiyang immediately ordered an investigation. At the very least, she needed to know who these two people were. It wouldn't be difficult at all to find out who these two people were. After Li Zongjio and Kun Erisher left the imperial city, Li Zongjio indicated for Kun Erisher to leave first. Are you all right? Lan Kun couldn't help but frown. What happened tonight was not a small matter, if one were to talk about it. Thus, Kun Erisher was worried about Li Zongjio. Tonight, they had directly barged into the imperial city. At the place where Sacred Flame Great Emperor lived, there were countless people who wanted his life. It was said that some members of the previous dynasty were starting to become active again. He was clamoring for revenge. It was probably because his wings were gradually hardening that such a situation would occur. "It's fine," Li Zongjio said. Kuan Erishur didn't doubt him. Even if there was something, Kuan Erishur wasn't strong enough to deal with it. Thus, it was better to just leave. He didn't need to worry about Li Zongjio. After Kuan Erishur left, a figure appeared behind Li Zongjio. At the same time, the ground beneath his feet began to change. Unknowingly, he was enveloped by the other party's domain. If he wanted to break this domain, it would be an extremely simple matter for Li Zongjio. However, Li Zongjio was also very interested in this person. "I've recently made a small breakthrough. Have you thought about exchanging blows with me?" Li Zongjio reached out and grabbed the peerless sword. Without waiting for the armament master to reply, he slashed out with his sword. Boom! The sword chi directly cut through the nothingness of the night sky. The surrounding environment had already left the imperial city. He appeared in a mountain range outside the sacred flame imperial city. He had teleported at least 500 miles in an instant. Clearly, the armament master's strength was also extremely strong. Hee, these old bones of mine haven't fought for 300 years. Today is a good day for me to get some exercise. The Qingyan dynasty only had a history of 300 years. Based on this, the armament master in front of him was also from the generation that followed the sacred flame imperial family to build the empire. Commander's seal, divine soldiers, and heavenly generals. The armament master threw 2 talismans into the sky. Suddenly, a golden light descended, and 2 golden armored divine soldiers appeared in front of Li Zongjio. Each of them had the cultivation of a supreme being. Chapter 1153. The 2 divine weapons attacked Li Zongjio at an extremely fast speed. Li Zongjio was not afraid at all. He directly rushed towards the 2 divine weapons. He slashed out with his sword. Bang! Bang! The sword chi swept past the divine weapons and directly blasted them away. Although the War Master was shocked to see 2 divine weapons retreating with one move, his expression was at least relatively calm. His fingers continued to move, as if he was controlling the 2 divine weapons in a way that was constantly guiding them. However, before the 2 divine weapons rushed back, Li Zongjio had already felt a movement behind him. A cold light flashed past Li Zongjio's body. His opponent's speed was extremely fast. After making the move, he did not show himself. He just turned around and ran. His figure once again hid in the void. However, what Li Zongjio left behind was only an afterimage of his doppelganger. His real body was already rushing towards the War Master. Boom! The sword slashed down and the earth shook. Although Li Zongjio did not use his full strength, this sword slash directly flattened the surrounding space. Everything that existed in this space was crushed in an instant. It was as if they were turned into dust. The War Master's figure also disappeared in this space. He had already moved several miles away. Although he dodged in time, the War Master was still quite surprised. Just now, Li Zongjio's sword was too fast. He even felt that the latter deliberately slowed down to give him a chance to escape. This was because the War Master did not expect Li Zongjio to make a move at all. He only reacted after Li Zongjio got close. Logically speaking, this should not have happened. Next time, you won't be so lucky. Li Zongjio smiled faintly. The 2 divine weapons behind him rushed towards Li Zongjio again. After a short exchange of weapons, Li Zongjio also cut off the heads of the divine weapons with each slash. The power of the divine weapon was easily defeated. In the end, it turned into a ball of power and rushed back into the body of the military master. The War Master couldn't help but take a few steps back. His feet trembled slightly. His eyes were filled with shock as he stared ahead. Li Zongjio's strength was simply terrifying. A few months ago, Li Zongjio's strength was far below his. At the very least, Bingshi was confident that he could take down Li Zongjio. But now, it seemed that if Li Zongjio went all out, killing him would not be difficult at all. That was why the War Master had such an expression as he looked at Li Zongjio. Seeing that Li Zongjio was about to charge over, the soldier master hurriedly shouted, "Stop, stop, Stop. I don't want to fight with you anymore. You're young and strong. I didn't expect you to improve so quickly. The War Master hurriedly said. Clearly, he was extremely fearful of Li Zongjio's strength. Li Zongjio also put away the unparalleled sword in his hand. The two of them descended. To Li Zongjio, whether or not he killed the armament master was not important. If there came a day when he did not like the armament master, killing him would not be a big deal. For Li Zongjio, it was a very simple thing. It wasn't too difficult, but there was no need to kill people yet. After all, he still had to have some respect for life. I'm old. I'm no match for you at all. Now, in this Xingwu continent, your strength is enough to become a top existence. You can do whatever you want. The War Master sighed. Even with his strength, he still couldn't figure out Li Zongjio's origin. However, now that Li Zongjio was so strong, there was no need for anyone to do anything. Origin didn't matter, as long as he had strength, it was enough. In addition, Li Zongjio's brother, Kuan Erasher, was recently in a heated relationship with Princess Jingon. Such a situation would definitely make Emperor Xingyan suspicious. However, the War Master knew that people like Li Zongjio had no interest in power. The so-called emperor could easily destroy you with a single palm. Who would be willing to take your country? Emperor Xingyan's worries were completely unnecessary. As long as you don't take the initiative to provoke Li Zongjio, you'll be fine. However, the most worrying thing now was that Emperor Xingyan would take action against Li Zongjio and take the initiative to provoke Li Zongjio. I don't have that kind of interest. In this kind of world, I just want to protect myself. Li Zongjio said. He had already tasted the taste of being able to do whatever he wanted in the continent. Therefore, in this life, he had no interest at all. He only wanted to make Luoxia City the peak of a generation and let the Li family become a true aristocratic family. By the way, recently, your friend Kuan Erasher is tied to Princess Jingon. With your strength, there's naturally no problem. However, Emperor Xingyan will not easily agree to this matter. The War Master said with a dignified face. This matter could be big or small. If Li Zongjio didn't care about Kuan Erasher, then this matter would be hopeless. However, if Li Zongjio insisted on helping Kuan Erasher, then he would probably confront Emperor Xingyan directly. The main thing was whether Li Zongjio valued Kuan Erasher or not. I agree to this matter. If Emperor Xingyan doesn't agree, I will personally talk to him. Li Zongjio said. This was definitely not a boast. Instead, it was a very serious matter. Furthermore, it was an elaboration of its own point of view. In this regard, there was no need to think too much. If you don't agree, then I will beat you until you agree. Give me some time, I will talk to Sacred Flame about this. The War Master said. Li Zongjio nodded. This was another reason why he wanted to fight with the War Master today. He wanted to let the War Master know how powerful he was. He also wanted to let the War Master and Emperor Xingyan know where they should be placed. Alright, if there is any situation, War Master, do as you see fit. If you have time, come to my residence. Li Zongjio said and then left. The War Master could only rub his head. These things were giving him a headache. Today's battle was also Li Zongjio's demonstration. It was also a clear message to them that if they wanted to go against Li Zongjio, they would have to think carefully about the consequences. Therefore, after the War Master returned, he must continue to persuade Emperor Xingyan. If Emperor Xingyan didn't stop, then things would become even more troublesome. Sigh. It's good that everyone is rational. This old man doesn't have to worry about everything. The War Master thought in his heart. This matter was really giving him a headache. But in comparison, the War Master didn't completely obey Emperor Xingyan. If Emperor Xingyan didn't listen to him, the War Master would definitely pressure the Emperor Xingyan to protect himself. In this era, it was more important to protect one's own life. If he really went against a monster like Li Zongjio, who knows what would happen? This gave Li Zongjio a lot of time. Who knows, he might become even stronger and more terrifying in the future. Therefore, it was better not to provoke such a person. If they couldn't be friends, then they must not be enemies. Chapter 1154. Back at the White Deer Mansion. Now, All the operations of the White Deer Mansion had been handed over to Xiao Zhao. Li Zongjio had also imparted the cultivation method to Xiao Zhao. He had even imparted the white god food to Xiao Zhao. It could be seen how much importance he attached to Xiao Zhao. Xiao Zhao's kindness to his young master was unforgettable. He had built the White Deer Mansion into the #1 faction in Monarch City. It had even become the backbone of many factions. Many people had chosen to rely on the White Deer Mansion. Just the number of primitive emperor experts in the White Deer Mansion was close to 10. Knowing that Kuan Erasure was going to Kuan Castle to compete for the position of the city lord, Xiao Zhao had also sent 2 primitive emperor experts to go with him. They could take care of each other when they returned. After all, the situation in Kuan Castle had been rather chaotic recently. After all, Kuan Castle was a city that had been guarded by the previous dynasty. Many of the descendants of the previous dynasty's officials had received protection in Kuan Castle. This had always been a huge hidden danger. Recently, there had been some signs of rebellion in the few cities near Kuan Castle. Therefore, Emperor Xian had also dispatched several armies and many experts. If Kuan City showed the slightest sign of abnormality, it would face a storm. Li Zongjio had nothing to do, so he personally worried about Kuan Arashi's matters. At the same time, there were many treasures in Kuan Castle. Therefore, Li Zongjio had some motives for going to Kuan Castle. The accompanying primitive emperor experts were all experts who had cultivated for close to 200 years. One of them was called Ku Bei. He came from the north and was a second-stage primitive emperor. To be able to turn the raindrops into countless sharp arrows with a flip of his hand, he must be an extremely strong water elemental cultivator. The other person was nicknamed the Spirit of the Sword. The weapon in his hand was a guillotine, and the murderous aura on his body was extremely strong. With such a person by his side, just by releasing his aura, it would save a lot of trouble. Many people didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. It could reduce a lot of trouble. However, there was Li Zongjio in the group, so the 2 primitive emperors kept a low profile. He didn't use the Eagle battleship. After all, the Eagle battleship was a secret weapon. In addition, he was constantly researching and improving it. He couldn't use it casually. After renting a spaceship from the flight center, he headed towards Kuan Castle. At this moment, in a courtyard of the Imperial Palace, Shueyu was lying on the windowsill, looking up in the direction of the flight center. There, her lover was flying in the sky. Soon he would come back to marry her. I heard that there are armies stationed in the vicinity of Kuan Castle. The situation isn't optimistic. I don't know what the Imperial Court is thinking. How can they bully people like this? Ku Bei was also very interested in the research of the war. The Spirit of the Sword was very quiet. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't open his mouth. However, when talking about the situation in Kuan Castle, the Spirit of the Sword had something to say. This was because the Spirit of the Sword had spent some time in Kuan Castle and made a name for himself. Now that he had returned, it would be more convenient for him to do things. Both of them were more familiar with the situation around Kuan Castle, so Xiao Zhao sent them here. I heard that the Green Dragon Army also has 20,000 soldiers here. The one overseeing this place is Hua Feihong of the Hua family. Everyone knew that there was a conflict between the Hua family and the young master Li Zongjio. However, the young master didn't put the Hua family in his eyes at all. The imperial court was worried that the Hua family and the White Deer Mansion would have a conflict, so they directly transferred all the members of the Hua family to the southern border. Now, they were redeployed to Kuan Castle. If the young master didn't appear, it would be fine. If he did, Hua Feihong and the others would definitely cause trouble. This trip was dangerous, but with 2 primitive emperors overseeing it, there wouldn't be any trouble. How are you going to choose the Castellan? Li Zongjio asked curiously. In the huge Xingyan dynasty, the Castellan of Kuan Castle was chosen by themselves and decided internally. If they didn't accept the appointment of the Xingyan dynasty, the people of the Xingyan dynasty wouldn't dare to take up the position here. There are 3 factions in Kuan Castle. I am from Arakuni, Shui Kuan's faction and Gu Kuan's faction. Each faction will decide the winner internally. Then, the 3 of them will participate in the trial and assessment together. The winner will be appointed as the Castellan and become the new leader of Kuan Castle. He will lead the 3 factions. The previous city lord was also from our desolate Kuan system. Thus, this time around, it will be even more difficult to fight for the city lord's position. That's because the other 2 factions will definitely go crazy. Even if they join hands and reach an agreement, they will not allow the desolate Kuan system to continue. Kuan Erasher said. It wasn't easy to become the Castellan of Kuan Castle. It involved a lot of things. Even the balance of power in Kuan Castle wouldn't be known until the last moment. Are you strong enough? Li Zongjio looked at Kuan Erasher. Kuan Erasher had made some progress in his cultivation. He was a level 5 Yuan monarch. Although he wasn't weak, he wasn't outstanding either. Based on Li Zongjio's current estimation, Lan Kuan's strength might be able to contend against a grade 7 or even grade 8 Yuan monarch. If Lan Kuan was a grade 9 Yuan monarch and slightly close to becoming a Yuan monarch, he would be in big trouble. It will be difficult, but I have to fight for it. Kuan Arashi's eyes were filled with determination. Li Zongjio naturally supported him. You can use my hammer first. Give it a try. Now that Li Zongjio had the matchless sword, he didn't need to use the hammer normally. The Black Dragon Soul wouldn't be of much help to him either. He would let Kuan Erasher wield the hammer first. He would come back after he won the Castellan position. Really? Let me try. I've been wanting to try it for a long time. This hammer seems very fierce. However, Kuan Erasher couldn't unleash the power of the Black Dragon Hammer at all. The Black Dragon Hammer was like an ordinary hammer in Kuan Arashi's hands. Other than that, there was no other effect. He couldn't help but frown. After trying a few times, there was still no effect. He couldn't unleash the power of the Black Dragon Hammer. Then you should be able to use this sword. Li Zongjio took out the 1,000 Slaughter Sword. Previously, when he stabilized his cultivation, he had also refined the 1,000 Slaughter Sword. It could also be called a saint-level divine weapon. Even the Desolate Heaven essence was inferior to it. However, when it came to weapons, it still depended on how easy it was to use. The 1,000 Slaughter Sword was a 2-handed sword. When Kuan Erasher held the 1,000 Slaughter Sword, he immediately felt the blood in his body boil. The pain of his meridians burning made Kuan Erasher involuntarily tighten his grip on the sword. He felt a rather terrifying aura. Holy shit! This sword is poisonous. Kuan Erasher even felt an extremely strong fighting spirit. Even if Li Zongjio was here, he would want to fight with him. Fortunately, reason controlled Kuan Erasher, so Kuan Erasher went straight to the spirit of the sword. When Kuan Erasher came into contact with the 1,000 Slaughter Sword, Ku Bei and the spirit of the sword, who were drinking tea and chatting, were also shocked. This terrifying murderous aura was not simple. What kind of person could release such a terrifying murderous aura? Then, they saw Kuan Erasher rush in, holding a rather fierce sword in his hand. What do you want? Where did you get this weapon? Senior Spirit of the Sword, I heard that your absolute soul saber technique is rather powerful. Today, I'd like to learn from it. The Spirit of the Sword felt the intense murderous aura from the 1,000 Slaughter Sword. It was as if his entire body was submerged in the deep sea, unable to breathe. However, the spirit of the sword naturally could not admit defeat after being challenged by such a junior. Furthermore, the spirit of the sword also wanted to experience the power of the 1,000 Slaughter Sword. How come? The spirit of the sword and Kuan Erasher immediately engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. In the beginning, the spirit of the sword only used 30% of his strength to suppress Kuan Erasher. Then, Kuan Erasher also seemed to have come into contact with the power of the 1,000 Slaughter Sword in his hand. He actually suppressed the spirit of the sword instead. As they continued to exchange blows, the Saber Soul had already used 50% of its strength. Kuan Arashi's 1,000 Slaughter Sword naturally became more and more comfortable with it. Then, Kuan Erasher suddenly erupted with the power of the 1,000 Slaughter Sword. There was a boom. It actually forced the spirit of the sword to retreat. Moreover, this sword also forced the spirit of the sword to use 70% of his strength to resist. It could be said that it gave the latter a fright. He had never encountered such a thing before. Senior Spirit of the Sword, are you okay? Kuan Erasure put away the 1,000 slaughter sword in his hand. He really liked this double-handed sword. Fuck, you scared me to death. You have to watch your sword carefully. Don't let its edge be released. Who knows, you might be killed by it while you're sleeping. The Spirit of the Sword said with lingering fear. The sword just now really gave the Spirit of the Sword a fright. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. If he was late, his neck would have been cut off. It was better to keep such a dangerous sword safe. Big brother, it's the ship. That terrifying aura just now came from the ship. There must be some powerful treasure on it. Chapter 1155. Li Zongjio had only rented a simple ship for the journey, which was arranged by Taifai. Li Zongjio had considered that some of the more expensive ships could be used to make money. Hence, he did not need to go through so much trouble as long as it could fly. After all, if an primitive emperor expert were to fly for a long time, it would be exhausting and tiring for him. Moreover, it was unnecessary. It would be a waste of energy if one insisted on doing it physically when it could be more convenient. At this moment, 3 flying ships had surrounded Li Zongjio's flying ship. The surface of the flying ship was painted with black paint and some patterns were drawn on it. It looked very distinctive. Dozens of thick iron chains were thrown out and nailed to the edge of the flying ship to prevent it from escaping. It seemed like they had encountered bandits in the sky. Li Zongjio did not need to deal with such matters personally. You guys can deal with it as you see fit. Kuan Erasure, the Spirit of the Sword, and Bei Ku left the cabin and went to the deck to welcome these people. Dozens of figures landed on the flying ship directly. Every one of them was holding a large saber and axe. Some of them even had fierce scars on their faces. There were even some whose eyeballs had been gouged out, leaving a hole where their eyes should have been. It was truly a horrifying sight. You guys are lucky to have met us, the Sky-Piercing Association. Today, either you hand over the treasure and leave obediently, or we'll send you all to the Western Paradise. The leader was a brawny man. His arms were bare and his body was wrapped in bandages. He had already started working before dawn. Kuan Erasure glanced at the 2 primitive emperor seniors behind him. Clearly, there was no need for them to take action in this kind of matter. They immediately coughed and walked forward. I am Kuan Erasure, a disciple of Kuan Castle. Heroes, please do me a favor. Kuan Erasure said with his hands cupped. It was best not to make a move if possible. After all, they were in the sky. If something were to happen to them, their chances of survival would be slim. Kuan Castle? That idiot Ching? A bunch of idiots amusing themselves. Let me tell you, before you even return to Kuan City is probably going to change owners. The burly man said disdainfully. In the past, Kuan Castle's reputation had spread far and wide. The descendants of the 3 branches were united against the outside world. However, after the recent peace, internal strife had begun. In addition, recently, there were people deliberately fanning the flames. Right now, within Kuan Castle, there was chaos and chaos. There were people from all sorts of backgrounds. Even bandits from all sorts of places came after hearing the news. It was all for the sake of robbing the people who were fleeing halfway through. If these people were fleeing for their lives, they would bring a lot of treasures and valuables with them. Although Kuan Erasure and the others were heading in the wrong direction and were heading towards Kuan Castle, it did not prevent them from robbing. When you can speak properly, you should speak well. Don't casually insult other people's homes. Kuan Erasure held the 10,000 slaughter sword in his hand. It was a good opportunity to test the might of the 10,000 slaughter sword and see if it was more convenient to use to chop people. A good weapon needed to be used to chop a few people. Oh, this little monkey wants to make a move. Brothers, cripple this little one and these 2 old men. The people behind him immediately burst out with energy. Dozens of dazzling lights burst out and charged towards Kuan Erasure. From the beginning, they did not think of letting Kuan Erasure and the others leave alive. This was the rule of this line of work. What if they waited for them to return and find someone to take revenge? Therefore, the best way was to kill, burn, and rob them. Kuan Erashur directly charged into the other party's camp. The 10,000 slaughter sword in his hand was extremely sharp, like the scythe in the hands of the Grim Reaper. Wherever it passed, these people fell to the ground. Moreover, when the 10,000 slaughter sword broke through the other party's defense, it would directly absorb the other party's blood. In just a few seconds, they would directly turn into a dried corpse. "His sword is poisonous," someone exclaimed. If it wasn't poisonous, how could a person turn into a dried corpse? Kuan Erashur did not expect the 10,000 slaughter sword to be so powerful. Moreover, the 10,000 slaughter sword actually had a bloodthirsty effect. Anyone who was cut by the sword would be directly refined as long as their energy could not resist the power of the 10,000 slaughter sword. Even if your energy was strong enough, if you could not force the 10,000 slaughter sword's energy out of your body, you would still be sucked dry. This was the terror of the 10,000 slaughter sword. Lan Kuan, who was holding the myriad slaughter sword, chased after the large group of people in front of him, causing them to flee in all directions. "Run! Quickly retreat!" Seeing that they were no match for Kuan Erashur, everyone jumped back to their ships. However, because they were in a hurry to escape, they did not untie the ropes and could not escape for a while. Kuan Erashur directly waved the 10,000 slaughter sword in his hand, and an extremely terrifying blood-colored sword energy immediately erupted from the 10,000 slaughter sword. Boom! The blood-colored sword energy bombarded the other party's flying ship. Like a piece of tofu, it was easily split into two halves. Two more bursts of sword chi were unleashed, easily slicing the other two flying ships in half. Some people were directly killed by the sword energy on the flying ship. Only a few smarter ones jumped off the ship in advance, saving their lives. Kuan Erashur did not continue to tangle with these people. After all, the situation in Kuan Castle was critical. As a member of Kuan Castle, he naturally had to return as soon as possible. He did not know what the situation was. No wonder Emperor Xingyan hated Kuan Erashur so much. However, there was no other way. After all, the strength of Kuan Castle was like a nail that could not be pulled out. If they wanted to pull out this nail, they would also lose a hand. Such a price was too high for them. The flying ship continued to move in the direction of Kuan Castle. For Kuan Erashur and the others, the sky-piercing gang was just a small fly. However, the sky-piercing gang was quite famous among the sky bandits. After all, the quality of the three warships was quite good. Now that they were directly split in half by a sword, these three warships could not be repaired. Some of the survivors also began to spread rumors. A disciple of Kuan Castle destroyed three warships of the sky-piercing gang. With his own strength. This news reached Kuan Castle even earlier than Kuan Erashur and the others. At a place less than 400 li away from Kuan Castle, the flying ship of Kuan Erashur and the others was also stopped by the army. They also issued a no-fly zone warning. All flying ships listen up. The area ahead is a no-fly zone. Please immediately turn around or land nearby. After registering, continue to move forward. The people in charge of the martial law here were the Blue Tiger Army. They were from the same lineage as the White Tiger Army and were often called the Little White Tiger Army. In order to enter the White Tiger Army, one must first stand out from the Little White Tiger Army. Only then would one be selected by the higher-ups. The deputy commander of the Blue Tiger Army, Zhao Lei, was ordered to lead the army and oversee this place. Recently, several large armies were directly dispatched. The purpose was very clear. This was a time for a change of dynasty. For Kuan Castle, this was a time for a change of dynasty. The imperial court could no longer allow Kuan Castle to continue acting so arrogantly. They needed to personally take care of this Kuan Castle. Zhao Lei ordered people to set up a no-fly zone. At the same time, anyone who tried to enter Kuan Castle's territory would be interrogated and monitored. At this moment, an ordinary-looking flying boat slowly entered their line of sight. There were only 400 li left. It wasn't very far. If they hurried at full speed, they would arrive in an hour. What's going on? This is... When Kuan Erashur saw the army block the road, he had a bad premonition. Li Zongjio also followed the others down the flying ship. Although Li Zongjio had special privileges, he didn't like to use them. It wasn't a big deal if he couldn't fly. It was fine as long as they didn't cross his bottom line. As for other things, it wasn't a big deal. You can stop here. Drive back by yourself. Be careful. Li Zongjio rewarded the pilot of the flying ship with 10,000 purple yuan. It was enough for the latter to be happy for a while. When the few of them landed, soldiers came over. Halt. Your household registration. Chapter 1156. The household register was a proof of identity issued by the imperial court. However, there were many things that could be used to prove one's identity. For example, the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion's token, the Merchant Alliance's token, or some forces and organizations that were registered in the state capital. Officers, what's the matter? Kuan Erasher frowned. Generally speaking, this was something that would only be investigated when pursuing a wanted criminal. But now, in this desolate area, they actually needed the household register. Could it be that they were casting a wide net to catch fish? People from Kuan Castle? Take out your household register. The three of you want it too. More than 10 soldiers stared at the people in front of them with vigilance. Ever since Kuan Erasher mentioned people from Kuan Castle, they had already started to be vigilant and even gradually became more cautious. When Kuan Erasher took out his Kuan Castle's household register, the squad leader immediately ordered, "Capture these people." Don't move. Kuan Arashi's eyes turned cold. Officers, what's the meaning of this? Although I'm from Kuan Castle, I'm also a citizen of the Xingyan dynasty. Without any evidence, without any reason, why are you capturing us? Kuan Erasher said angrily. Kuan Castle is harboring rebels. The higher-ups have ordered that not a single person from Kuan Castle can be let off. Anyone who disobeys will be killed on the spot. This squad was also quite elite. They had quite a tacit understanding when they attacked. The formation was also quite orderly, surrounding the four of them. At the same time, the commotion here attracted the joint patrol not far away. Although Kuan Castle was open and had a large population, only people from the Lan family's headquarters in Kuan Castle could truly obtain the household register of the Kuan Castle. Li Zongjio and the two primitive emperors maintained a state of watching with folded arms. It wasn't a big deal. Moreover, Kuan Erasher also wanted to know what was going on. Wait a minute, Kuan Erasher shouted as he stretched out his hand. However, they thought that he was resisting and immediately attacked him. In the end, Kuan Erasher could only helplessly attack them and send them flying. Bang bang! In just a few moments, the dozen or so soldiers were all on the ground. Wait a minute, I'm a student of the Heavenly Stellar Medicine Manor. He has a student ID. Kuan Erasher took out his Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor's student card. Right now, they were only second-year students. Seeing the student ID in Kuan Arashi's hand, the squad leader took it and carefully examined it. He found that it was really the same, but he was still very vigilant towards Kuan Erasher and the others. If he was a student of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor, it would mean that he had come from the Holy Flame Royal City. At this moment, there were several squads that came from afar to provide support. However, they didn't continue to attack. After a while, this matter was reported to Deputy Commander Zhao Lei. After hearing about this matter, Zhao Lei directly brought people to Kuan Erasher and the others. After checking the student ID that Kuan Erasher handed over, he returned the student ID. He then ordered his men to return the student certificate and household register to Lan Kuan. You guys should go back. The situation in the Kuan Castle is very chaotic. If you enter rashly, I reckon that you will die in the internal strife even before we take action. If you know what's good for you, leave quickly. Preserving your life is the most important thing. Zhao Lei said indifferently. No, I'm a member of the Kuan Castle. What's the situation in the Kuan Castle now? Kuan Erasher asked. There are traces of rebels in the Kuan Castle, but the city lord refused to allow the imperial court to enter the city to arrest them. What do you think the crime is? Impossible. There is no need for the Kuan Castle to do this. The city lord would never let such a thing happen. City lord? Haven't you heard that the city lord of the Kuan castle was plotted against by someone? He is now seriously injured and is a living dead. The entire Kuan castle is very aggressive, as if they want to start a war at any time. They think that the imperial court plotted against your city lord. Do we need to be so despicable? Everyone knows that there must be a traitor in your Kuan castle. Zhao Lei said. As a veteran who had been on the battlefield for many years, he clearly saw through all kinds of situations and schemes. You're from the Arakuni, right? Recently, Arakuni has been greatly suppressed. Only death awaits you if you go back. I advise you to go back to the royal city first. You can come back after we've quelled the chaos in the Kuan castle. Kuan Erasure didn't hear the last part of Zhao Lei's words. He only heard what Zhao Lei said. The city lord of the Kuan castle was attacked by someone and his life was hanging by a thread. What? Something happened to my father? It must be the Shui Kuan's people who did it. Kuan Erasure clenched his fist when he heard this. His eyes shone with a fierce light. He wanted to rush out and tear the Shui Kuan's people to shreds. What? Your Lan Yu's son? Zhao Lei looked at Kuan Erasure and said with interest. He didn't expect to encounter such an interesting situation. Previously, he thought that Lan Yu's son had already received the news and ran away. It was said that Arakuni's life was very difficult. Only Lan Yu was still hanging on by a thread. If he died, Arakuni would be the first to suffer a great blow. General, please let me pass. Otherwise, even if I have to force my way in, I will still try. Don't be silly. Why would I stop you? However, since you're Lan Yu's son, I'll help you. You have to help me too. Zhao Lei said. Kuan Arashi's face was also filled with doubt after he heard this. Song Zhe, bring 2 men with you. Disguise yourselves and enter the city with them to spy for information. After he finished speaking, he looked at Kuan Erasure and said, Don't worry. Our army is only interested in the rebel army. As for the internal strife in your city, it has nothing to do with us. Song Zhe, who was called over, looked very young. From the insignia on his body, he was actually a corporal. At such a young age, he was already a corporal. It seemed that his strength wasn't simple. Kuan Erasure didn't refuse. Song Zhe also picked 2 capable subordinates. After they changed their clothes, they followed Kuan Erasure and the others. For convenience, they even prepared fast horses for them. Immediately, 7 fast horses quickly moved towards Kuan Castle. Strange. Why does the other young man look so familiar? I can't put my finger on it. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before, but he's definitely not from my army. Zhao Lei said with a frown. I'm getting old. My brain isn't as bright as before. If you can't remember, then forget it. You guys continue to enforce martial law. The spies that were sent in these 2 days have all been cleared out. It's clear that the situation in the city is quite serious. Everyone be alert. Yes, General. After that, Zhao Lei once again lay down on his rattan chair and leisurely enjoyed the scenery in front of him. These kind of good days don't come often. Who knows when a war will break out? Outside Kuan Castle, Kuan Erasure and the others had already arrived in front of Kuan Castle. Once again, they were stopped by someone. Who are you? Someone on the city wall shouted down. In some of the hidden compartments on the city wall, they could clearly feel that there were arrows aimed at them, ready to attack at any time. I'm Kuan Erasure. The people in Kuan Castle naturally knew Kuan Arashi's appearance very well. After confirming Kuan Arashi's identity, someone on the city wall immediately opened the city gate. Recently, Kuan Castle had fallen into a state of isolation. The dynasty's army was stationed in all directions. As for the whereabouts of the rebel army, who knew? Kuan Erasure, you're finally back. A burly man came forward with a group of people and hugged Kuan Erasure. Uncle Lan Wei, let me introduce you. These 2 are the Spirit of the Sword and Senior Bei Ku. This is my big brother, Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio? Lan Wei heard this name and suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if he had heard it somewhere before. Suddenly, Lan Wei remembered the owner of the White Deer Mansion, the famous evil lord. In addition, Li Zongjio had another identity. He was the national protector, an honorary elder of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion. You're the legendary evil lord? Lan Wei couldn't help but look at Li Zongjio. He could naturally feel that there was something unusual about the aura of the spirit of the sword and Li Zongjio. However, no matter how he looked at it, he didn't think that Li Zongjio was very powerful. Just call me Li Zongjio. You don't have to be so formal. Li Zongjio smiled faintly. Obviously, Lan Wei had a good relationship with Kuan Erasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have acted like this. By the way, these three are from the Blue Tiger Army. They said that they wanted to spy on the rebel army. Kuan Erasure turned around and looked at Songzhi and the other two. Songzhi's expression immediately changed. He knew that Kuan Erasure was definitely unreliable, but he didn't expect him to betray them as soon as he came in. Kid, how dare you betray us? Songzhi's eyes flashed with a trace of viciousness. Kuan Erasure didn't care at all. Were these people stupid? Under such circumstances, did they expect Kuan Erasure to help them deal with Kuan Castle? You Imperial Army are full of tricks. Take them down. Lock them up. Chapter 1157. Immediately, the three members of the Blue Tiger Army were imprisoned. However, they were not killed. After all, if they died, it would be more troublesome. The current situation in Kuan Castle was extremely chaotic. With the slightest carelessness, the imperial court would find an excuse to invade. Thus, they absolutely could not allow the imperial court to find an excuse so quickly. It's good that you're back. Your father's current situation is extremely bad. Right now, the Shui Kuan faction has already made Langu the acting city lord. He will be in charge of the next city lord selection. Lan Wei brought along Kuan Erasure, Li Zongjio and the others as he spoke. Although the position of city lord had temporarily changed hands, Kuan Arashi's father, Lan Yu, was still the city lord. In addition, the military power was also in Lan Wei's hands. Thus, right now, those people only dared to make some small moves in the dark. If it was something that was truly out in the open, then they wouldn't dare. Let's go see my father first, Kuan Erasure said. In comparison, the position of city lord had already become less important. The most important thing was still his father's safety. The locations of the three factions in the city were all different. They all had their own mansions. Although they were said to be of the same breadth and branch, sometimes there would only be one share of benefits. In the end, there would always be favoritism. Kuan Castle's system consisted of one city lord and 7 elders. These 7 elders were all highly respected and extremely senior individuals from the various clans. If there were any important decisions, they would have to go through the Elder Council to make a decision. However, right now, the Shui Kuan faction gradually occupied 4 seats in the Elders' Council. This caused the situation in the Elders' Council to gradually lose balance. Right now, if someone from the Shui Kuan faction were to obtain the position of city lord, it would be difficult to take it back. The entire city would also become the property of the Shui Kuan faction. As for why the Shui Kuan faction couldn't be allowed to obtain power, there was an extremely great secret behind it. However, in a situation where their descendants were not good enough, they could only watch as Kuan Castle fell into the hands of others. Once the Shui Kuan faction came to power, they would definitely declare war on the Shengyan dynasty, or even declare their own country. That would definitely bring disaster to Kuan Castle, so they had to stop the Shui Kuan faction. Arakuni's mansion. Because the city lord had been attacked and had yet to recover from his serious injuries, the entire mansion was heavily guarded. It was extremely normal for there to be a guard every 10 steps and a sentry every 3 steps. General Lan Wei. The leader of the guards was also a disciple of the main family, Lan Tian. When Lan Tianying saw that Lan Wei had brought people over, he personally went up to check on them. When he saw that it was Kuan Erasure who had returned, a surprised smile appeared on his face. "Third young master, you've returned." When they saw Kuan Erasure, Lan Tianying and the others were clearly very excited. Kuan Erasure was the 3rd son in the main family, but he was also the most talented one. The eldest brother was not young anymore, but his cultivation was not as good as Kuan Arashi's. The second sister was a woman, so she could not inherit the city lord's position. In Arakuni, Kuan Arashir was the only one who was capable. Other than him, there were also a few talented youths. If Kuan Arashir did not return, they could only push them up. Uncle Tianning, this is my eldest brother, Li Zongjio. These two are senior spirit of the sword and senior Baiku. Li Zongjio, you are. When Lan Tianning heard Li Zongjio's name, he was instantly shocked. Then, he looked at Li Zongjio in disbelief. You are, yes, that's right. Let us go in first and take a look at father's condition. Kuan Arashir said. Kuan Arashir was a disciple of the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor, so he must have some attainments in medical skills. Perhaps he could save the family head. All right, follow me. All the pharmacists in the city have come to take a look, but this bunch of trash can't even find out anything. It's just that your father will vomit black blood every 6 hours. If this continues in less than 3 days, there will be no signs of life at all, Lan Tianning said as he walked. On the other side, Lan Wei continued to deploy his troops. Although there was nothing to do on the surface, with the undercurrent surging, it was natural for him to be prepared for everything. Vomit blood every 6 hours? Kuan Arashir frowned and looked at Li Zongjio. Obviously, with his knowledge, he had never seen such a situation. On the other hand, Li Zongjio looked indifferent as he came to Lan Yu's room. There were many guards guarding the place from all directions. Among them, there was even an primitive emperor hiding in the dark. However, when Li Zongjio and the rest arrived, the hidden primitive emperor walked out. Elder Yi. Lan Tianning and the rest bowed. Kuner is back? Lan Yi looked at the group of people in front of him and looked at the spirit of the sword and Baiku. Of course, his focus was on the spirit of the sword. The spirit of the sword. Lan Yi was shocked when he saw the spirit of the sword. This person who had died many years ago actually appeared in front of him again. Old Yi, we haven't seen each other for so many years. You're actually still alive. Lan Tianning and Kuan Arashir looked at the two of them in surprise. Obviously, they did not expect the two of them to be old acquaintances. After all, the spirit of the sword had dominated Kuan Castle a long time ago. Only the older generation would remember it. You guys go and chat. We will go in and take a look, Li Zongjio said. If these people continued to exchange greetings one after another, who knew how long it would take? Yes, young master. The spirit of the sword and Baika followed Lan Yi to the side and chatted. Li Zongjio, Kuan Arashir, and Lan Tianning walked into the bedroom. At this moment, the bed was covered with a white veil and there was a brazier under the bed. Did you invite Senior Heavenly Medicine here? A girl who was taking care of the sick bed turned around and asked. Her hands were still wiping the sweat off Lan Yu's forehead. When she turned around and saw Kuan Arashir, her eyes were filled with surprise. Little Kuan. Second sister, I am back. Kuan Arashir said. This person was the second sister, Lan Yin. She was also a deacon in the Lan family. At the same time, she was also the shopkeeper of several shops. After knowing that something had happened to her father, she temporarily put down the things in her hands and came back to take care of her father. Her mother had even fallen ill because of this. Lan Yuyen was originally also a delicate and pretty great beauty, but these few days, she was also much more haggard. She had no appetite for food and drink, and even had people spend a large sum of money to go and invite Senior Heavenly Medicine out of the mountain. This Senior Heavenly Medicine was a very famous pharmacist in the surrounding area. However, after so many days, he still had not arrived. Could it be that he was not satisfied with the price? At this moment, another guard came to report. Second miss, bad news. Senior Heavenly Medicine's entire family was killed. Senior Heavenly Medicine's whereabouts are unknown. Chapter 1158. The most powerful pharmacist within a radius of 10,000 miles had his entire family killed. Moreover, the pharmacist himself had disappeared. Could it be that Senior Heavenly Medicine killed his family and then went into hiding? If that was not the case, then someone must be plotting against him. Damn it! Lan Yuyen was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She wished she could find the person behind this and tear him into pieces. "Let me take a look," Lee Zongjio said. He could not just watch Kun Arashi's father die like this. Lee Zongjio immediately took a step forward. Lan Yuyen did not know Lee Zongjio in front of her, let alone Lee Zongjio's background. Therefore, when Lee Zongjio spoke, she looked at Lee Zongjio with a puzzled expression. "You are little Kuen's friend, right? Little Kuen, take your friend to the living room to rest for a while. Let's have dinner together later." Lan Yuyen had been in the martial arts world for many years. She was quite confident in judging people. Therefore, when she saw Lee Zongjio, his temperament was not weak. He should be someone who had seen the world. However, if she were to put her father's life in the hands of such a young man, wouldn't it be sending her father to his death in vain? Moreover, he hadn't even investigated the way he came. Even if it was his younger brother, he could have been deceived. This was a very normal thing and not surprising at all. There was nothing wrong with being more careful. Moreover, Lan Yuyen was already very polite now. At such a critical moment, anyone with unknown origins could be an enemy. Her father fell ill and was plotted against. Her eldest brother had not returned. Now that her third brother had returned, it was difficult for him to take on a big responsibility. Therefore, although Lan Yuyen was a woman, she needed to step forward and take care of the family's overall situation. "Second sister, this is my eldest brother. His name is..." "That's enough. Don't casually bring your brothers back home in the future, especially in such a situation. If they want to come and play, they can come back when the time is right. Uncle Tianning, see them out." Lan Tianning's face was filled with awkwardness. The second Mrs. Temper was just that bad. After all, it was a tumultuous time. It was always good to be more sensitive and consider things more carefully. However, Lee Zongjio's identity was not that simple. Even Lan Tianning couldn't help but advise him in a low voice. "Second miss, this is Lee Zongjio, the honorary elder of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. What do you mean not too long ago?" "Wait, what did you say?" Lan Yuyen suddenly froze. The most important word popped into her mind. Heavenly Dan Pavilion, honorary elder. Recently, the honorary elder of Heavenly Elixir Pavilion was the most active one. In the Saint Flame Empire, he was considered an extraordinary person. Moreover, with the status of an honorary elder, he could easily kill any alchemist in seconds. As for that whatever senior heavenly medicine, in front of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion, he did not have any reputation at all. Most of the people in the Heavenly Dan Pavilion were good-for-nothings. The truly powerful ones were only those at the top. However, the relationship between Kuen Castle and the Shengyan dynasty was not good. Therefore, there was even less of a relationship between them and the Heavenly Dan Pavilion. Lee Zongjio. When Lan Yuyen thought of the name Lee Zongjio, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Speaking of this domineering fellow, Lan Yuyen had always admired Lee Zongjio's personality. He was omnipotent. It could be said that he was unscrupulous. However, this situation made Lan Yuyen feel extremely embarrassed. The arrival of such an expert would definitely bring about a change in the situation. At the very least, it would not be a problem for him to save her father. Just a moment ago, she wanted to drive Lee Zongjio out. Immediately, Lan Yuyen felt her face burning with shame. Lee Zongjio did not care too much. He came to Lan Yu's bedside and used a finger to point at the space between Lan Yu's eyebrows. Immediately, a ball of mental energy entered Lan Yu's body. It could be felt that there was a force in Lan Yu's body that wanted to repel Lee Zongjio's mental energy. This was Lan Yu's own original spirit energy. However, Lee Zongjio's mental energy was not something that this little original spirit energy could resist. It immediately bypassed the latter's resistance and thoroughly investigated the situation in Lan Yu's body. Everyone stood behind Lee Zongjio and nervously watched the changes in the two people. It actually broke through father's defense. The primordial spirit's self-protection was also a very big factor that hindered treatment. It would think that these external forces were all threatening, and then the primordial spirit would forcibly protect its master, not allowing its master to suffer the slightest harm. Therefore, many pharmacists could not detect any situation at all. They could not even get past the original spirit of the body. This poison is called the meridian poison. It is considered a relatively obscure poison. The person who can get this poison must be related to the 5 poisons. Li Zongjio said, only the 5 poisons could refine this poison. The meridian poison was the specialty of their sect. Those who were poisoned would vomit 3 liters of blood every day without any cause or effect. When the blood that was vomited was black with a tinge of red, it meant that their life had come to an end. Li Zongjio explained to the people in front of him. He was indeed worthy of being the honorary elder of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. With a single move, he easily saw through the secret of this poison. Such a knowledgeable person was indeed different. The 5 poisons. However, these people seem to be unfamiliar with this name. I heard that a guest elder called Ordinary Wu came to Xue Kuan's mansion. He is extremely skilled in refining poisons and is also quite accomplished in detoxification. With his poison skills, no one dares to get close to him. Lan Tianying said. If that was the case, then there was something very suspicious about this person called Extraordinary. Suddenly, Lan Yu, who was lying on the bed, vomited a mouthful of black blood. Moreover, this black blood had a bit of scarlet in it, black with a tinge of red. The maid beside him quickly went forward to wipe away the blood. When everyone saw the color of the blood, their faces instantly turned pale. Elder Li just said that if this black blood with a tinge of red was vomited, it meant that the person was dying. Everyone quickly went forward, but they did not know what to do. What's the rush? I just said that the person is dying. It's not like I can't cure him. Li Zongjio waved his sleeves and said, in principle, my service fee is 10 billion purple yuan. However, for Kuan Arashi's sake, this time I will treat it as a gift. Back off, Li Zongjio said. Everyone did not react in time. When they heard that they were asked to back off, they all retreated. Li Zongjio flicked his finger. A flame jumped out from his finger and landed on Lan Yu's body. In an instant, the flame rose and enveloped Lan Yu's body. Lan Tianying and the others were shocked. They were worried that their patriarch was in danger. However, they were stopped by Lan Yuan. She indicated that they should not disturb Li Zongjio. Although Kuan Arashir was confident in Li Zongjio, he could not help but feel nervous. After all, the person lying on the bed was his father. His life was in Li Zongjio's hands. Chapter 1159. At this moment, Lan Yu's entire body was surrounded by raging flames. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, the slightest fluctuation in the flames was enough to burn Lan Yu's body to ashes. Everyone looked nervously at Li Zongjio's actions. However, Li Zongjio opened his left hand. A fire cauldron condensed in the center of his palm. Kuan Arashir, add in the herbs. Li Zongjio said. Kuan Arashir immediately stepped forward. Li Zongjio used his mental energy to spread the herbs on the table. Then, Kuan Arashir followed Li Zongjio's instructions and added the herbs into the fire cauldron one by one. Of course, the process of adding the herbs was very particular. It had to be done carefully. It could not casually cause any fluctuations or any sudden changes. It had to maintain the stability of the fire cauldron. The sky-high flames moved around Lan Yu's body for a full 2 hours. The entire room was like a furnace. The maids could no longer bear it and retreated one after another. Lan Yuyan and Lan Tianying did not circulate their energy to resist the heat. If they rashly used their energy and caused an accident, they would not be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, they forced themselves to endure the heat. Sweat soaked through her clothes, causing Lan Yuyan's cheeks to become even redder. Lan Yuyan was at the prime of her life. Her clothes were drenched in sweat, but it also showed off Lan Yuyan's sweaty figure. Cough, cough. Lan Tianying coughed softly, attracting Lan Yuyan's attention. Only then did she realize how unsightly she was. It was as if she had been fished out of the water. Then, the yuan energy in Lan Yuyan's body trembled slightly, evaporating her sweat. It's done. Go out and endure the pill lightning. Li Zongjio said. Kuan Arashir was stunned. What did he mean? Before Kuan Arashir could ask, however, he heard a muffled sound coming from the sky. Rumble. The sound of rolling thunder caused Lan Kuan's mind to be startled. It had only been 2 hours. Just like that, he casually refined a 6th-grade medicinal pill. Are you kidding me? Was he making sugar figurines? Not to mention Kuan Erasure, even Lan Yuyen and the others didn't have time to react before the sky began to thunder. Rumble. Lightning surged in the sky. Seeing Kuan Erasure rush out, Lan Yuyen and Lan Tianing finally understood. This is pill lightning. Only a 6th-grade medicinal pill can cause pill lightning. Just like that, he refined a 6th-grade medicinal pill? Lan Yuyen opened her mouth wide and looked at the young figure in shock. His every movement gave people a sense of steadiness. To ordinary people, this was already considered a miracle. However, to Li Zongjio, this was just a common occurrence. Go get a big bucket of water and put him in the bucket. Then, use this medicinal pill and throw him in the water. After soaking in the water for 2 days and 2 nights, he will recover. Li Zongjio said to Lan Yuyen and Lan Tianing. Lan Yuyen and Lan Tianing hurriedly left to carry out Li Zongjio's task. When they went out, they saw Kuan Erasure on the roof enduring the pill lightning. A total of 5 pill lightning bolts fell, making Kuan Erasure suffer a lot. After putting Lan Yu in the bathtub, Lan Yuyen asked again, "Why don't you do it?" To throw a 6th-grade medicinal pill into the water, Lan Yuyen was afraid that she wouldn't be able to throw it properly. Hence, she asked Li Zongjio again. It doesn't matter who throws it. Just throw it in. Li Zongjio said. Lan Yuyen didn't hesitate and threw the medicinal pill in her hand into the water. Immediately, the medicinal pill dissolved in the bathtub and waves of fragrance filled the air. At the same time, they could see that there seemed to be waves of black gas being devoured in Lan Yu's body. Although Lan Yu's expression showed that he was in pain, everyone could feel that Lan Yu's aura was slowly recovering. All right, we'll just have to wait for 2 days. From the looks of it, he'll be fine in 1.5 days. Li Zongjio sighed. Originally, the deadline of 2 days had already been brought forward a little. However, Lan Yu's physique seemed to have become even stronger than he had imagined. Really? Thank you, Elder. Thank you, Elder. Lan Yuyen was so emotional that she was about to cry. She was so touched that tears fell. I want to tell Mother about this. Kun Arashi's mother was also exhausted because of Lan Yu's poisoning. In just 2 days, she fell ill. Now that she knew about this, she would probably be so excited that she would wake up immediately. Let's go out too. Li Zongjio waved his hand and said. No matter how strong Lan Yuyen's outer appearance was, after a slight change, her inner world would be revealed. The two of them happened to meet Kuan Erasure, whose body was completely black from the pill lightning. When they saw Kun Arashi's comical appearance, Lan Tianing and Lan Yuyen couldn't help but laugh. Why are you laughing? What's so funny? How's father's condition? Kuan Erasure said as he puffed out black smoke. All right, with Elder Li's help, there's no need for you to worry. Go wash up and come with me to see Mother. These 2 pieces of good news will definitely make her happy. When Lan Kuan saw the look on his second sister's face, he knew that there was no problem. Thank you, big brother. Thank you, big brother. Kuan Erasure was so emotional that he danced with joy. If Li Zongjio wasn't here today, he really wouldn't know what to do. Lan Tianing was also in charge of bringing Li Zongjio to rest first. After a while, the meeting would be held. At the same time, he also invited Elder Li to listen in. This was because Li Zongjio was not only an elder of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion, but also the great master protector of the Xingyan dynasty. Letting the imperial tutor listen in on the family meeting could at least prove that they didn't have any intention of rebelling. Lan Yuyen instructed that the news of the patriarch's recovery must be kept strictly confidential. Not a single bit of it could be leaked out. Therefore, in the entire family, only a few people knew about it. Of course, this matter was also notified to Elder Lan Yi. When Elder Lan Yi heard this news, he was extremely shocked. Moreover, when he was chatting with the spirit of the sword, he already knew about Li Zongjio's identity. He was even more shocked that such an important person had quietly come to their place. If it was any other time, he would definitely be able to sense it. Fortunately, Li Zongjio didn't care about these things. He wasn't too interested in this aspect. This also allowed Lan Yuyen and the others to breathe a sigh of relief. At the very least, it seemed that Li Zongjio was the kind of boss who was very reliable. Some people were happy, while others were worried. Li Zongjio's actions could be clearly seen by everyone in the city. The appearance of the Great Six-Pill Lightning was especially eye-catching. After seeing this pill lightning, the members of the Lan family of Shui Kun immediately gathered everyone for a meeting. Chapter 1160. Shui Kun Faction, Lan Family. Langu was now the acting city lord. Before this, he had always been a member of the Elder Hall. Now that Lan Yu was seriously ill, Langu directly took over the affairs of the city. He actually wanted to start a business of selling Kun stones. The reason why the Lan family had been able to protect Kun Castle for so long and had such a special status was because of the Kun stones in their hands. Kun stones were unique to Kun Castle. Weapons and armor made with Kun stones all had a special characteristic: water repellent. This property was actually not very powerful. However, it could have unimaginable effects at specific times. Now, the Xingyan dynasty was also vigorously developing the marine resources of the North Sea. Kun stones became the most important thing. The water-repellent property was very important in such a competition for resources. Therefore, the Shui Kun faction's people wanted to sell the Kun stones. This price was, of course, a very moving price. However, the people of Arakuni faction did not agree. Speaking of which, this matter was only a fuse. The conflict had been buried deep for hundreds of years, and there was more or less hatred between them. In addition, the wild Kun lineage had been the dominant force for a very long time. It was time for a change. That fluctuation just now seemed to be the pill lightning? Lan Shouxin, one of the 4 elders of the Shui Kun faction, said in a deep voice. Originally, the position of Great Elder was Langu. However, now that Langu had become the acting city lord, Lan Shouxin naturally became the new Great Elder. In Kun Castle, there are no 6th-grade alchemists. Who can summon pill lightning? Lan Shouyu was also puzzled. Lan Shouyu was the 3rd elder. Arakuni faction's Lan Yi was the 2nd elder. Just now, a scout came back to report that he saw 4 people enter the city. Lan Wei went to greet them personally. If I'm not wrong, it should be the 3rd son, Kun Erisher, who has returned. The 5th elder Lan Shue has said. Even if this Kun Erisher stayed in the Heavenly Dawn Medicine Manor for a period of time, he might not be able to refine a 6th-grade elixir. He must be accompanied by an expert. Have you checked the identities of the other 3 people? Langu asked. We're doing our best to track him down. As soon as possible, we must find out the identities of these people by tomorrow. Yes, Patriarch. Langu looked around and then waved his hand. The surrounding maids nodded and retreated, covering the door. After the scene was cleaned up, Langu knocked on the table. Tonight, we have to figure out Lan Yu's situation. We can't wait any longer, Langu said in a deep voice. If they continue to delay, they won't have time to deal with the various armies outside the city. Who knows what will happen? When the time comes, all the internal and external troubles will be concentrated to deal with them. It will be very difficult. I've already made the arrangements. Tonight, we will send a group of people to sneak attack the garrison outside the city and leave behind something related to Arakuni. So, there will definitely be some movement tonight. When the time comes, the 5th elder will bring people to infiltrate Arakuni's residence and investigate Lan Yu's situation. 5th elder, you're in charge of supporting from the outside. If there's any movement, you must immediately retreat. You must not be caught in any way. Yes, Patriarch. The entire secret room was filled with a faint murderous aura. Those who want to do big things don't care about trifles. Since they were going to do it, they had to do it on a big scale. Patriarch, the new generation of City Lord candidates has been selected. With Wu Zhang's strength, it shouldn't be a problem. But this Kun Erisher, how should we deal with him? The 3rd elder, Lan Shouyu, said. If this kid is a threat, let Wu Zhang kill him during the competition. If he can be subdued, let's keep him for the time being. We'll naturally have a use for him in the future. Shui Kuan's side had already started to discuss the countermeasures for the night attack. The meeting on Arakuni's side was also called by Lan Yuan. The second elder, Lan Yi, Lan Tianing, and a few other deacons of the family, Kuan Erasher, were also present. First, everyone welcomed Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio also signaled them to sit down in an extremely cold manner. There was no need to be so polite. Then they got to the main topic. Naturally, they didn't mention the situation of Patriarch Lan Yu. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. Moreover, they trusted Li Zongjio. They directly sent the spirit of the sword and Bei Ku to protect him in the courtyard. Originally, these two people were sent by Xiao Zhao to help Kuan Erasher. It wasn't easy for him to return to the family, so he sent these two experts to help. The price to hire these two people wasn't cheap, especially for such a long-distance mission. Normally, there was a cost to keep them, but if they went out to work, there would be a high commission. However, the White Deer Mansion could afford it. It was precisely because the White Deer Mansion was getting bigger and bigger that many things had already crossed the red line. However, this wasn't important. Having strength was the most important thing. When the White Deer Mansion had such strength, they wouldn't be afraid of the Xingyan dynasty anymore. First, the patriarch is injured. Continue to search for famous doctors. In addition, the cause of death of the Heavenly Medicine Master's family must be investigated clearly. Also, find the Heavenly Medicine Master as soon as possible, whether he's dead or alive. Second, Kuan Erasher, go to the Ancestral Hall tomorrow to sign up. The selection for the next city lord has already begun. From what we know, Lan Wujiang has already won in Shui Kuan's faction. He's your old rival. Moreover, Lan Wujiang is already the 7th elder of the Elder Hall. Lan Yuyan said in a deep voice. What? How could that guy become an elder? The Lan family's 3 major factions only had a total of 7 elders, and Lan Wujiang was one of them. This Lan Wujiang was indeed capable, but this guy's style of doing things was unscrupulous. He was vicious and merciless, and there was no way he could pass the test of character. How could he become an elder in such a muddle-headed manner? There's no need to delve into the reason. However, he does have some achievements. Otherwise, the Ancestral Hall would definitely not agree. In addition, Gu Kuan's faction is Lan Jiangxue. That crazy girl is also participating? When he heard this name, Kuan Erasher was also a little surprised. Gu Kuan's faction had always been low-key and didn't like fighting. However, they were also quite powerful and couldn't be ignored. After many years of hiding their strength and biding their time, they might have already surpassed the other 2 factions. Moreover, Lan Jiangxue was also a woman. In the Lan family's rules, there was no rule that forbade women from participating. However, it was extremely difficult for a woman to pass through the layers of tests. At least until now, only one person had succeeded. Moreover, she had also paid a great price. She couldn't marry or have children for the rest of her life. She had to devote her heart and soul to the family because some things couldn't be spread to the outside world. Therefore, Kuan Erasher was also very surprised that Lan Jiangxue could participate. Chapter 1161. After listening to the entire meeting, Li Zongjio did not expect it to be so troublesome. Since the people from the Shui Kuan faction wanted to rebel, wouldn't it be easier to just go up and suppress them? How could there be so many things for them to do? If it was Li Zongjio, none of these people would survive. Of course, Lan Yuyan didn't know what Li Zongjio was thinking at this moment. After the meeting was over and the morale of the army was stabilized, Lan Yuyan walked up to Li Zongjio. Elderly, I have offended you before. Please forgive me. Lan Yuyan lowered her head and said softly. She looked like a little girl who had done something wrong. She did not look like the girl who led everyone in the meeting and pointed out the wind and clouds during the meeting. It's fine. Li Zongjio waved his hand and said, Second miss, it's not good. The army outside the city is approaching. Suddenly, a guard came to report, which stunned Lan Yuyan and the others. What do you mean? Could it be that they want to attack Kuan City at night? Everyone was shocked, but Lan Yuyan immediately arranged for people to go to the city gate. If they did not stop it in time, a battle would break out tonight. It might even be a war. Uncle Tianning, I'm worried that someone is setting a trap. You must protect father's safety. Don't worry, second miss. The loyalty between people of the same clan was indisputable. Therefore, Lan Yuan also handed the family headquarters to Lan Tianning. Lan Tianning was the captain of the guards in the residence. Li Zhongjiu also followed Lan Yuan, Kun Erisher, and the others to the city gate. However, they saw a large number of soldiers gathered in front of them. The weapons in their hands were already extremely shiny. The defenders of Kun Castle and Lan Wei were confronting the enemy. Lan Wei's eyes were as sharp as knives. Under the night sky, he quickly counted the number of people on the other side. There were at least 10,000 soldiers. Moreover, the wind and sand billowed in the distance. It seemed like a large number of people were rushing over. The leader was none other than the Blue Tiger Army's deputy commander, Zhao Lei, who met Li Zhongjiu and the others before. At this moment, Zhao Lei's armor was stained with blood. General Zhao Lei, what is the meaning of this? Are you going to rebel? Lan Yuyan climbed up the city wall and saw Zhao Lei below and shouted. Kun City has been granted special permission by the imperial family. It is still the territory of the Saint Flame Empire. If there is no order to deploy troops, General Zhao Lei, what you have done today is a serious crime of betraying the empire. When Zhao Lei heard Lan Yuyan's words, he sneered. Stop putting on an act here. Today, you actually dared to send people to assassinate me. I think you really don't want to live anymore. As soon as Zhao Lei's voice fell, his subordinates threw out 5 corpses with a bang. These 5 people were all wearing the Lan family's disciple robes. However, who would wear such obvious robes when assassinating someone? Only a fool would do something like that. However, it didn't matter if the matter was foolish or not. What was important was whether or not people believed it. Zhao Lei chose to believe it. Even if you had 100 mouths, you wouldn't be able to debate it clearly. When Lan Yuyan saw these corpses, she knew that this was definitely someone's plan. Open the city gates. I want to go out. When Lan Yuyan decided to go out personally to negotiate, Lan Wei and the others became nervous and hurriedly tried to persuade her. Lan Yuyan could be said to be the central pillar of these people. If she was captured by Zhao Lei and the others, Kun Castle would be in a very passive position. Don't try to persuade me. Today's matter must be risky. This is clearly a trap set by someone to throw us into chaos. Kun Erisher, quickly return to the family and guard it. Lan Yuyan said to Kun Erisher. She felt a little uneasy. Although Kun Erisher was also very worried about his second sister's safety, the family still needed someone to look after it. Boss, I'll leave my second sister to you. After saying that, Kun Erisher turned around without hesitation and urged his horse to gallop away. Lan Yuyan glanced at Li Zhongjiu and nodded to Li Zhongjiu. She was obviously grateful to the latter for staying behind to stabilize the situation. With Li Zhongjiu here, even if there was a problem, she believed that with Li Zhongjiu's skills, his life would not be in danger. Lan Yuyan left the city under the protection of 2 guards. When Zhao Lei saw the city gates open, his heart was slightly moved. If he rushed in and took control of the situation now, it would be a great achievement. However, as Lan Yuyan said, the imperial court had not given an official order. After all, without conclusive evidence, they could not casually launch an attack. If this was the case, then some of the families and forces that had sought enlistment in the past would also have some thoughts in their hearts. For example, the Gu family that had been destroyed by Li Zhongjiu could also be considered as a force that had been recruited. There were many similar situations in the Xingyan dynasty. If all of them were to erupt at the same time, then wouldn't it give the rebels an opportunity? If things went wrong, then a disaster of internal strife would break out. Therefore, before taking action, this name must be firmly secured. In addition, he only had 10,000 men under his command. Just now, he had already issued an urgent order. If he wanted to mobilize more men, it would take at least a few hours. As for these mere 10,000 men, Zhao Lei really did not dare to kill his way in. These people from Kun Castle were not simple. They had inherited their family's primordial spirits. If primordial spirits of the same attribute were to erupt on the battlefield, then their morale would definitely increase greatly. At that time, Zhao Lei probably would not be able to survive. He saw Lan Yuyan spurring her horse out. Zhao Lei could not help but have a higher opinion of Lan Yuyan. To be able to appear in such a situation, at least this boldness was not something that ordinary scoundrels could compare to. These corpses have nothing to do with my people from Kuan Castle. General, please take a closer look. Lan Yuyan investigated for a while and knew that these people were not from Kuan Castle. Moreover, the undulations in their bodies were somewhat strange. The primordial arts that they cultivated were also extremely special. She could not sense which family's ability they were from. Lan Yuyan flipped one of the bodies over. Suddenly, she saw that there was an air sac that was constantly contracting on one of the bodies. Bang! With a loud sound, the flesh and blood directly exploded and flew everywhere. At the same time, a pitch-black gas directly spread out from the corpse. They had actually fallen into a trap. There's poison. Everyone retreat. After seeing this scene, Zhao Lei loudly shouted. At the same time, he was also incomparably vigilant. It seemed that this really had nothing to do with Lan Yuyan and the others. Because this attack was not only targeted at Zhao Lei, but more importantly, Lan Yuyan. Second miss. Lan Wei and the others saw this scene from the city wall and immediately became incomparably nervous. However, in the next moment, they saw that the black gas that filled the sky did not continue to spread. Instead, it was wrapped by a primordial qi. In the end, it was also continuously compressed and fell into a palm. Only then did Lan Yuyan put down the hand that was blocking in front of her. She looked at Li Zongjio in front of her in shock. She did not know when Li Zongjio had appeared by her side. Go! Li Zongjio flicked his finger. With a bang, the compressed poisonous gas in his hand hit one of the people from the Blue Tiger Army. That person was directly sent flying to the ground. The poisonous gas also directly entered his body. Then, the facial features on his face actually began to change. He's not one of us. It's a disguise technique. Chapter 1162. When everyone saw the person who had revealed his true form, they all exclaimed because they didn't recognize the person in front of them at all. Zhao Lei pays his respects to Lord Imperial Tutor. When Zhao Lei saw Li Zongjio, he was once again sure of Li Zongjio's identity. He immediately jumped down from his horse and came in front of Li Zongjio to pay his respects. When the soldiers behind him saw Zhao Lei kneel down, they naturally did not dare to stand still. They also knelt down in front of Li Zongjio. Previously, Zhao Lei did not recognize Li Zongjio. However, now that Li Zongjio had shown himself and was standing so close to him, no matter how bold Zhao Lei was, he did not dare to pretend to be blind anymore. A country has its own laws. If he looked down on the imperial tutor, it would be the same as looking down on the entire Xingyan dynasty. Zhao Lei did not dare to take any chances. The soldiers who were so aggressive just a moment ago actually knelt down in unison. This showed how important Li Zongjio was as the imperial tutor. Since the founding of the Xingyan dynasty, there was only one imperial tutor, Li Zongjio. Get up. You don't have to kneel when you see me in the future. Sorry for the trouble. Li Zongjio said indifferently. He waved his hand. Although that was what he said, Zhao Lei did not take it seriously. After getting up, he signaled the soldiers behind him to get up as well. Everyone stood up in unison as if they had rehearsed this. Their movements were extremely neat and uniform. That's enough. Bury these corpses and move that person's body into the city. You come with me. You two can talk things out before you come back. Fighting and killing all day long. How many people have died? Li Zongjio said indifferently. These people at the bottom would go out to fight just because of a word from the person above them. It was very pitiful. Therefore, Li Zongjio decided to intervene to prevent things from getting worse. Originally, he had only come to check on Kun Arashi's situation and see if he could become a city lord or a fort master. Who would have thought that he would encounter such a situation? Yes, Lord Imperial Tutor. Although Zhao Lei was nervous, the Imperial Tutor had already spoken. Could this be the great emperor's intention? The order that Zhao Lei received was only to station troops here, and it did not specify any further actions, so he did not take action for a long time. However, Zhao Lei also understood the intentions of the higher-ups. They had to find a reason to take down Kuan Castle. But now that the Grandmaster Protector is here, do you think you can just lead your men to attack? Of course, he had to figure out what was going on. Set up camp here. Without my orders, no one is allowed to approach. Zhao Lei arranged the troops behind him. He only brought 4 personal guards with him. Lan Yuyan breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, a battle was unavoidable tonight. Both sides would have to pay a high price. However, she did not expect that Li Zongjio would be willing to stand up for Kuan Castle and prevent the outbreak of this conflict. This had saved many lives. Thank you, Imperial Tutor. Lan Yuyan said. Call me Li Zongjio or Elder. Imperial Tutor sounds too old. It sounds like a swindler. Li Zongjio obviously did not like the way the Imperial Tutor was addressed. It sounded a little low-class. Zhao Lei, who was following at the side, almost tripped over his right foot. He could not believe that Li Zongjio would actually say such words. His evaluation of the Imperial Tutor's title was so low. If you don't want to be the Imperial Tutor, then give it to me. Of course, Zhao Lei was only thinking about it. Imperial Tutor. The few little brothers that I sent earlier. Oh, they were just captured. Let's talk about this later. Li Zongjio said. Zhao Lei was referring to the 3 people who were captured by Kuan Erasure as soon as they entered the city gate. They were caught off guard and did not even have time to escape. It was fine as long as they were not dead. After all, the original purpose of these 3 people was not pure. Generally, if such spies were caught, they would end up in a very miserable state. Zhao Lei followed the few people into the city. Naturally, he was incomparably calm. With Zhao Lei's own ability, he believed in his own strength. Although he did not dare to say that he could kill several people here, it was not necessarily difficult for him to escape. At the same time, as long as the signal arrow was released, a large number of people would directly kill them. The death of a general would have very serious consequences, especially at this time. General Zhao, I have heard a lot about you. Lan Wei walked down. When he saw Zhao Lei entering the city with him, he smiled. At the same time, his expression was a little strange. After all, such a thing had never happened before. He was also glad that the people of Kuan Castle did not think of rebelling. Otherwise, it would be difficult for Zhao Lei to leave after coming in. General Lan Wei, I have rarely heard of your name. Today, Imperial Tutor is here, so I will spare your lives for the time being. You should open the city gate as soon as possible and let my people in to search for the rebels. Zhao Lei said proudly. Even if he was in the enemy's headquarters, he did not have the slightest fear. General Zhao, there must be a misunderstanding, Lan Yuan said. And just when the several leaders were about to have a good discussion, suddenly, a loud noise came from the city. Boom! Li Zongjio looked over. The place where the loud noise came from was Arakuni's mansion. Obviously, there were experts fighting. The spiritual energy in the entire city seemed to be drawn and instantly fell into a chaotic storm. Boom! Not good, let's go back quickly. Lan Yuyan and the others could no longer care about Zhao Lei and the others. They directly led their people and rushed in the direction of the family. Imperial Tutor, please. Since Zhao Lei had already come in, he might as well go and see what these people were up to. Of course, Zhao Lei did not dare to ignore Li Zongjio. He stretched out his hand and said. After seeing Li Zongjio take a step forward, he followed behind Li Zongjio. Whoosh! Whoosh! 4 figures had already rushed up to the sky. Clearly, this was a fight between 4 primitive emperors. They never thought that there would be so many primitive emperors fighting. Protect the Imperial Tutor, Zhao Lei said in a low voice. As a soldier, his first duty was naturally to protect the important figures of the imperial court. Regardless of whether the latter needed protection or not, this scene had to be completed. His duty had to be in place. The few of them rushed up to the sky and fought in the sky. At the same time, there were sounds of fierce fighting in the mansion. However, with the arrival of Lan Yuyan and the others, The other party seemed to have realized that the situation was not good and wanted to retreat. Catch them, Li Zongjio said. Zhao Lei and the others rushed out without hesitation. The few Yuan King-level experts that Zhao Lei brought with him were by no means weak. When they rushed out, they seemed to be greatly disturbed and besieged by the group of people in black who were fighting. At this moment, the Lan family was in chaos. There were countless sounds of fighting. Li Zongjio walked into the back alley and saw a figure who seemed to be hiding in the dark. Chapter 1163. Lan Xuehe, who was lurking, suddenly felt a gaze staring at him. He immediately raised his head and stared at the person in front of him with an ominous glint in his eyes. "Get lost if you don't want to die," Lan Xuehe said coldly to Li Zongjio. The people of the 5 poisons seemed to be in big trouble. Could it be that the 3 primitive emperors couldn't break into Arakuni's mansion? Therefore, Lan Xuehe's thoughts were all on the people of the 5 poisons. Even if they couldn't kill Lan Yu, they had to at least run away. Even if they couldn't run away, they had to commit suicide. They couldn't leave anyone alive. If they were caught and exposed the actions of the Shuekuan faction, the consequences would be quite serious. Therefore, this was one of the reasons why he was here. Could it be that this young man in front of him was an idiot? Lan Xuehe saw that Li Zongjio didn't leave for a long time and was actually walking towards him. Lan Xuehe thought in his heart that he might as well go all out and take down Li Zongjio. When Li Zongjio was close enough, Lan Xuehe suddenly made his move and struck his palm towards Li Zongjio's head. Boom! When Li Zongjio faced this palm, there wasn't the slightest ripple. He stood in the same place as if he hadn't moved at all. However, when Lan Xuehe's palm came down, it struck the air. What? Lan Xuehe couldn't believe his eyes. The opponent's aura was clearly here. How could it miss? This made Lan Xuehe quite surprised. However, when Lan Xuehe was about to move, it was already too late. Li Zongjio's figure appeared behind Lan Xuehe. He reached out his hand and grabbed, lifting Lan Xuehe up. Ugh! Lan Xuehe kicked his legs and struggled to get out. However, he didn't expect that Li Zongjio would actually appear behind him. This made Lan Xuehe extremely struggle. After that, Li Zongjio directly crushed Lan Xuehe's spine. Lan Xuehe's body fell to the ground with a plop. You still want to kill me? Li Zongjio was no longer interested in such an opponent. This was one of the disadvantages of being a master. It was lonely at the top. Once you reach the top, doing anything would be very simple. You'll realize how boring it is. He kicked Lan Xuehe's corpse to the side. It was as if he was kicking away trash that was blocking his way. He didn't know what kind of trash this corpse belonged to. The battle in the mansion was about to come to an end. In the battle in the sky, one died while the other fled. The spirit of the sword had already chased after the one who had escaped. To ensure his safety, Bei Ku had also stayed behind. In addition, there was another primitive emperor expert who was holding a human hostage. And this hostage was Lan Yuan. Let her go, and I'll let you leave. The second elder, Lan Yi, said in a deep voice. His gaze was like a cold knife, piercing into the eyes of the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man's skinny hand grabbed Lan Yuan's throat. The snow-white and tender neck formed a sharp contrast with the shriveled hand. Step back or else. After saying that, his fingernails easily cut open the skin and dug into Lan Yuan's neck. Zhao Lei and the others were also surrounding them. Seeing that Lan Yuan was trapped, he didn't care. You won't be able to escape today. This chick is nothing to me. I don't care about her. Zhao Lei's eyes flickered with a cold light. The long knife in his hand turned slightly. He was ready to intercept the other party. This group of people was obviously in the same group as the group that had attacked him. It was just that these people were stronger, while the group that had attacked him looked like they were here to die. They were simply 2 different people. Then I'll kill her, the black-clothed man said sternly. His 5 fingers had already begun to exert force, preparing to crush Lan Yuan's throat. Stop! Kuan Arashur shouted angrily. However, the black-clothed man's hand didn't continue to move, as if he was under a strong restriction. His entire body was stiff on the spot, unable to move. This caused the black-clothed man to reveal a trace of fear in his eyes. What? Lan Yi and the others also clearly felt the black-clothed man's abnormality. Bang! The black-clothed man let go of Lan Yuyan and actually knelt on the ground. This kneeling was extremely forceful, directly smashing both of his knees. Ah! The black-clothed man couldn't help but growl as a sharp pain came from his kneecaps being crushed. Lan Yuyan hurriedly moved away from the other party, while Lan Yi protected her behind him. Bang! In the end, the black-clothed man directly hit the ground with his face facing the ground. He directly smashed a deep hole in the ground. There's one more in the back alley, I've already dealt with him. Li Zongjio's voice sounded behind everyone. It turned out that Li Zongjio had made a move. Otherwise, this primitive emperor black-clothed man wouldn't have made such a strange move. Lan Yi looked at Li Zongjio in shock, and then looked at the black-clothed man in front of him who had already been subdued. It was simply unbelievable. Li Zongjio's cultivation had actually reached such a level that he could already suppress an primitive emperor expert to such a state just by relying on his own mental strength. Lan Yi also fought with this black-clothed man just now, but both of their strengths were about the same. Moreover, the other party's cultivation technique was rather strange, which allowed him to gain a lot of advantages. Therefore, Lan Yi's heart was also quite surprised. Only Li Zongjio could achieve such a state. Could it be that this Li Zongjio had really reached the legendary supreme realm? Thank you, Elder Li, for saving me. Lan Yuyan cupped his fist and said to Li Zongjio. However, Lan Yuyan soon felt weak in his body. A sense of helplessness came over him. That person's nails are poisonous. You've been poisoned. Li Zongjio threw a medicinal pill to Lan Yuyan. After taking it, Lan Yuyan's condition improved slightly. No matter what kind of poison it was, Li Zongjio seemed to be able to cure it. Moreover, Li Zongjio's strength was unfathomable. After seeing Li Zongjio's strength, Zhao Lei couldn't help but have the intention to rely on him. It wasn't easy to survive in the army now. If he could have someone to protect him, then don't even talk about promotion. Just based on his achievements, he would have a lot more opportunities than others. However, he didn't know if this imperial tutor would want him to rely on him. He heard that Li Zongjio's White Deer Mansion in the city was quite popular. Recently, he had even started to manage some military equipment business. If there was a chance, he definitely had to get in touch with him. Kuan Arisher saw that his sister was fine and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, boss was here. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened. The spirit of the sword, who had gone to chase after him, also landed in the courtyard. He ran away. The spirit of the sword was still holding an arm in his hand. He casually threw the arm on the ground. The blood on it was obviously just cut off. Chapter 1164. It seemed that the spirit of the sword was calm and indifferent, but one must know that this was the arm of an primitive emperor. Obviously, even if the other party had escaped, he had paid a great price. Another primitive emperor. Zhao Lei was shocked. From the way he was dressed, he was also an expert who came with Li Zongjio. In this battle, the other party had 15 people who came to sneak attack. Except for the person who escaped with a broken arm, the rest were all killed in Arakuni's mansion. When the corpse in the back alley was carried back, Lan Yuyan and the others were extremely shocked. How is this possible? Lan Tianying sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw the corpse. The corpse lying in front of him was the fifth elder of the Shui Kuan faction, Lan Shuehe. Why would Lan Shuehe appear in their back alley at this time? Could these people have been sent by the Shui Kuan faction? Now the evidence is irrefutable. Lan Yi let out a long sigh. Now, the bad relationship between the two factions of the Lan family was put on the table, and the last piece of cloth was removed. There was no use in regretting anything. The situation had just calmed down. After receiving the news, Langu and the others led the experts of the Shui Kuan faction to the front of Arakuni's mansion. They were stopped by the guards behind the door. In the end, a few of them attacked and injured the guards of the Lan family. Obviously, Langu and the others were extremely angry and came with great momentum. You people are not qualified to stop me. Langu's eyes were full of indifference. The guards in front of him were not qualified, and they did not have the strength to stop these people. The noise outside the courtyard naturally attracted Lan Yuyen and the others. "Second miss, it's Lord Langu. Our people can't stop him." Just as a guard came to report, he saw a large group of people walking in with a menacing aura. "Lan Yun, how dare you kill an elder of the Lan family?" When remote antiquity saw Lan Shuehe's corpse on the ground, his eyes narrowed. Lan Shouxin, Lan Shouyu, and the others beside him were filled with killing intent as well. First of all, the reason why they reacted so quickly was because they were worried that these people would discover their relationship with the five poisons. They had always been able to disassociate themselves from this matter. But today, Lan Shuehe was suddenly killed without any warning. This couldn't help but make them worried. This matter couldn't be exposed. If they were caught on the spot, they would be at a great disadvantage. Now that they saw that Lan Shuehe had died, although they were furious in their hearts, they were at least relieved. It was fine if he was dead, but they were afraid that this half-dead person would be interrogated. Now that there was no evidence, even if they found out something in the end, they could easily deny it. They could completely deny that it was Lan Shuehe's own action and it had nothing to do with them. Now that such a thing happened, of course, they would use this matter to make trouble for them. "Elder Langu, what do you mean by this? Could it be that you want to cover up a traitor who colluded with the five poisons to murder the city lord?" Lan Yuyen said indifferently. After seeing Lan Shuehe's corpse, she knew that Langu and the others would definitely use this matter as a pretext to make a fuss. But she didn't expect these people to come so quickly. They had just carried the corpse in when these people arrived. If they were a little later, Lan Shuehe's corpse would have been carried away by them. In these few seconds, Lan Yuyen had already formulated a countermeasure. At the same time, she roughly understood these people's series of plans for tonight. It was really a good method. Now that Lan Shuehe was dead, he didn't have much value. Even if there was evidence to prove that Lan Shuehe colluded with the five poisons. Moreover, this was the name of the five poisons. Lan Yuyen also knew this from Li Zongjiu's mouth. Although she was 90% sure that these people were certainly experts of the five poisons. But without conclusive evidence, Lan Yuyen could only take a risk. The gamble was to believe what Li Zongjiu said. These people were all from the five poisons, or were related to the five poisons. If it was true, Langu and the others would certainly not dare to make a fuss. When Lan Yuyen mentioned the five poisons, Langu only felt his heart stop for a moment. It was as if he was hit by a stick. But fortunately, he was already old and experienced. There was no fluctuation on his face. At the same time, his face was full of surprise. "What did you say? The five poisons?" With such acting skills, if people didn't know the inside story, they would probably believe it. But the people present were not simple people. Which one of them hadn't been in the Jianghu for a long time? If they didn't have this little bit of Jianghu experience, then they wouldn't be able to survive. However, no one exposed it. Lan Wei and the others naturally watched coldly from the sidelines. They were already well aware of each other's intentions. But this play still had to continue. "Elder Langu, don't you know? My father was plotted against by the five poisons. Today, I don't know why these people dared to force their way into my Arakuni residence. Their fates were very clear. Except for one who escaped, the rest were all killed. And what hurts me the most is that all of this was planned by Elder Lan Shuehe. He even wanted to save people and help the five poisons kill the people of my Lan family. Elder Langu, regarding why Lan Shuehe betrayed us, I hope that Elder Langu can investigate it clearly. See if there are any accomplices in the Shuekuan family." Lan Yuyen said. She took the initiative to deny everything to Lan Shuehe. Otherwise, it would be impossible to prove that the entire Shuekuan family was related to this matter with just a corpse. Since that was the case, they would directly confirm Lan Shuehe's identity as a traitor and let the people of the Shuekuan family know the difficulties and retreat. Hearing Lan Yuyen's words, Langu immediately understood Lan Yuyen's intention. One must know that Lan Shuehe was only coordinating outside. He would never take the initiative to attack the Lan family. He wasn't a fool. If he directly killed his way in, he would be exposing himself. But it was useless. Lan Xuehe was already dead. Moreover, the other party insisted that Lan Xuehe took the initiative to kill his way in. There was no way to explain this matter. Langa knew that he couldn't gain any advantage today. But this was also good. At least there was no evidence on the surface. There's such a thing. At this time, my Xuekuan family will definitely give you an explanation. Take Lan Xuehe's corpse back and investigate it properly. Lan Xuehe's corpse can't be taken away, Lan Wei said in a deep voice. Who knew how many secrets there were in it? How could it be taken away so easily? After taking it back, there would be no clues at all. Lan Wei, let's not talk about whether Lan Xuehe was a traitor or not. Even if he was a traitor, he should be interrogated and judged by my Xuekuan family's torture chamber. Langu's attitude was extremely strong. There was no room for discussion in this regard. Lan Shouxin and Lan Shouyu, the two elders of the Xuekuan family, directly stepped forward and took Lan Xuehe's corpse away. Let them take it away. Elder Langu, please investigate it properly. If you catch other traitors, please don't show favoritism. Don't worry. Langu was already gnashing his teeth. This girl from Arakuni was so hateful. However, Lan Yuyan's reaction was indeed very fast. Just the way she handled things today had already saved them a lot of trouble. Otherwise, if Langu and the others had gained the upper hand, the development of the matter would have been even more unpredictable. Of course, there was another main reason, which was that the three primitive emperors had been killed. Who knew what kind of experts were hidden in Arakuni's courtyard? Even if a fight broke out, it would not necessarily be advantageous. Isn't your family a little too troublesome? This kind of thing is already so obvious, yet you're still putting on an act here. Although many people couldn't help it, only one person dared to say it out loud. That person was Zhao Lei. Li Zongjio was naturally too lazy to say it. This kind of thing had nothing to do with him. It was just that the old man was too arrogant, so he couldn't help but kill him. There was no personal feelings in it. Upon hearing Zhao Lei's words, the faces of the people from the Lan family turned ugly. Although the current Lan family of Kuan Castle was still known as having three bloodlines, in fact, the blood relationship between the three bloodlines was already very weak. Thank you for your help today, General. Uncle Tianning, please take General Zhao and a few other brothers to the Soaring Cloud Inn to rest. Later, after Yuan has settled things, we will definitely pay you a visit to thank you. There were some people who were called assassins. They did not have noble morals, but they had principles and integrity. They walked on the edge of the black and white, but they were not mercenary. Although they were insignificant people in the antique world, they could use their high intelligence to precisely identify fat worms, bait them, lure the enemy in, and finally close the net and kill the pig regardless of whether it was the new book, the mountain and sea return to the treasury, or the appraisal article. It had already been published. You should definitely take a look. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.